If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 136, Demon. The feeling of dimensional travel was, in general, no different from the first time. In what seemed like a tunnel where even time lost its meaning, Riesel flew like a ghost, continuously heading toward the other end of the seemingly endless tunnel of light, flying for a long, long time. It wasn't until he felt like he was passing through an invisible barrier that his vision brightened and his ethereal body began to feel a heaviness, giving substance to his otherwise weightless consciousness. Before long, the feeling of being dropped came over him, and Riesel sensed that he had landed safely on solid ground. Arrived. Riesel thought in wonder before opening his eyes. However, even though he had opened his eyes, his visible range was strangely very limited, which startled him slightly. He soon discovered that he was in pitch-black darkness. He heard the wind all around, accompanied by the rustling of trees. He smelled the air, carrying a thick scent of soil, while the ground beneath his feet felt somewhat soft. He saw the sky, but it was dark and overcast, with neither the moon nor a single star visible. Needless to say, it was now nighttime. Eventually, Riesel found himself deep in the mountains and forests under the cover of darkness. How did I end up in the mountains? Riesel frowned before raising his hand. Bstt. A burst of light immediately rose from his palm, forming a flame that illuminated all around. This was a simple magic personally taught by Yuri, an ignition magic within the transformation system. It seemed insignificant, but as she had said, it could come in handy when necessary. After lighting this small flame, Riesel confirmed that he had indeed landed in the deep mountains, surrounded by trees and bushes. In such a night devoid of moonlight and starlight, being in the depths of the mountains and experiencing pitch darkness was quite normal. Not even sounds of birds or insects. Riesel felt the terrifying silence around him. It was a far cry from his first dimensional travel when he arrived directly in Orario's urban district, bustling with crowds. Such a silent night in the deep mountains, staying here for too long would feel quite horrifying. I hope no demons are lurking around. Riesel muttered. The demons he referred to were not the typical evil demons in some legend or folklore but the man-eating monsters of this world. In this world, some demons looked indistinguishable from humans, some had obvious differences in appearance, and some were outright heteromorphs. They had nothing to do with the fictional existence of demons and could not be considered the same kind of creature. Demons of this world generally had stronger bodies and greater strength than humans, possessing what could be termed immortal. Even if injured, they would immediately recover. Some powerful demons could even regenerate if cut in half, making them seemingly undying in the eyes of ordinary people. Such a group of demons had only one weakness: they couldn't stand sunlight. Once exposed to sunlight, they would immediately turn to ashes. Because of this, demons only became active after the sun had set, and during the daytime, they were nowhere to be seen. Immortal monster, hey! Riesel's eyes flickered, allowing the firelight to dance around his body. After discerning the direction, he began to move. Anyway, let's go down the mountains first. However, even after walking for a long time in the pitch-black mountains, Riesel still hadn't heard any sounds of birds or insects, which was quite unusual. Let's go up the tree and take a look. Riesel didn't continue walking aimlessly, instead, he leaped up like an arrow shot from a bough onto a tall tree, gazing out from the treetops. Gazing from this great height, he finally spotted a glimmer of light in the pitch-black mountains. It was the light emanating from a small house halfway up the mountains. Someone actually lives in these remote mountains. After thinking that, Riesel didn't hesitate any longer. With a swift movement, he flew out like a bird in flight, rapidly heading toward the house. Tap! In less than a minute, he descended from the sky and landed in front of the house. Who's there? Seemingly startled by the slight noise Riesel made upon landing, a cautious voice resounded from inside the house, reaching his ears. Riesel squinted his eyes at the small house ahead of him, silent for a moment before responding. Just a lost traveler in the mountains. I spotted this house and figured I'd seek some help. Upon hearing his response, the person inside seemed to fall silent and didn't speak again. After a while, the door of the house suddenly opened, and someone stepped out. Surprisingly, it was a beautiful woman in a kimono with fair skin, which immediately caught his eye. Come in. Upon seeing Riesel standing at the door, the woman's eyes flickered slightly before she spoke with some coldness. Sorry for the trouble. Riesel made a gesture of respect and then followed the woman into the house. The interior of the house was very simple, with no extra rooms. A quick glance revealed the 4 wooden walls that made up the entire house and minimal furniture. There was only a fire burning in the middle, cooking a pot of meat. As Riesel gazed at the pot of meat, his expression turned cold. Phew phew phew, wanna have some? The woman's mocking laughter resounded, chilling as if a gust of icy wind, sent shivers down one's spine. Yet, what sent shivers down the spine even more were her next words. I just cut off the neck of someone living in this house, ready for a feast, but then you suddenly showed up. Well, since it's an unexpected addition to the meal, I tossed him in the pot for a little reheating. Care for a taste? As she spoke, the woman's voice had changed. Once cold yet pleasant, it had now turned hoarse and sinister, akin to a demon's chuckle. So, this is what they call a man-eating demon, hey? Riesel didn't turn to the woman and simply remarked with a calm tone. Knowing about demons was one thing, but actually encountering one was another. Before seeing them firsthand, Riesel regarded the existence of this world's demons merely as knowledge and imagination. But now, seeing this demon woman and her brutality with his own eyes, he couldn't help but feel disgusted. You bunch of scum really deserve to die. Before his voice could fade, however, the woman behind him already moved. Approaching silently from behind like a large carnivorous beast, she lunged at Riesel with astonishing speed, aiming to bring him down for a feast. Unfortunately, the lunge missed its mark. What? The woman raised her head and swiftly turned toward the direction of the firelight. With the firelight illuminating her body, her appearance had completely transformed. Her once slightly beautiful face now sported fangs, her eyes fierce and terrifying. Her head elongated like that of a snake, and even her once fair skin was now wrinkled like snake scales, resembling a terrifying snake monster. Where is my prey? Where's my food? As the demon woman growled furiously, a cold response came from her left. Right here. Unfortunately, she didn't have time to react. Puchi. With a flash of silver light, a dazzling slash sliced through her neck in the blink of an eye, severing her head. Appearing from the side, Riesel brandished a bright silver short sword and swung it at the demon woman without giving her a chance to react. His slash was merciless and swift, revealing his determination to kill her on the spot. However, you bastard! Are you a demon slayer? The demon woman, whose head had been chopped off, not only failed to die instantly but, even as her head rolled on the ground, she let out a furious roar at Riesel. At the same time, her headless body didn't collapse but instead started moving again, continuing to lunge at him. This was this world's demon. Whether their heads were chopped off or their bodies dismembered, they wouldn't die. If her head were reattached to her body, she could quickly return to normal without any harm done. For ordinary humans, except for demon slayers who knew how to kill demons, killing one could be nearly impossible unless they were brought into sunlight. However, Riesel obviously wasn't ordinary. Facing the headless demon woman's body lunging toward him, Riesel didn't dodge or swing his hermit again. Instead, he extended a finger toward the body and swiftly tapped it. Bzzzt. There was a slight sound as Riesel's finger touched the demon woman's body. Decompose. His ice-cold voice slowly spread. In the next moment, a crimson light appeared at the tip of his finger before transforming into a wave and then into a vortex, spreading from his finger. Before long, the entire body of the demon woman was instantly encased by the vortex, freezing in place. Boom! In no time, the headless body suddenly burst without any warning, turning into countless fragments, and vanished completely. As soon as her body vanished, the demon woman's head on the ground unleashed a hysterical scream. She was horrified to find that her body was gone. Not chopped into pieces, not burst like just seen, but disappeared to nothingness directly, as if it never existed in the first place. Yo, you monster! Seeing the incomprehensible scene and unfathomable power of this young man, the demon woman was terrified. Crash! Without hesitation, she crashed through the window, letting her head fly out. Unfortunately, before she could fly far, a fluctuation of crimson waves surged out from the wooden house, resembling a beam of light, catching up with her head in an instant. Bzzzt. As the crimson beam hit her, it disintegrated her head into nothingness. Chapter 137, Mugen Train. Inside a small wooden house, illuminated by the flickering flames, everything fell into tranquility. Riesel extended his finger toward the shattered window, witnessing the final moments of the demon woman before slowly lowering his arm. Turning around, he glanced at the gruesome pot, sighing moments later. Well, I guess this is vengeance for you. Rest in peace. After uttering those words, Riesel walked out of the house, swinging his hand as he did, causing a gust of wind to blow, scattering the fire cooking in the pot and splattering it onto the wooden floor, walls, and ceiling. As he walked away from the house, with his back turned, flames soared behind him. The entire house was engulfed, burning fiercely in the darkness of the night, dispersing the darkness that once enveloped the mountains. Gradually, the sounds of birds and insects began to emerge. Riesel didn't look back again. Following the path leading down the mountains from in front of the house, he left behind this gloomy place. The day gradually brightened as sunlight spilled onto the earth. At the foot of the mountains, a small town also began to bustle. People gathered in twos and threes, chatting, working at the market, creating a lively scene. At this moment, the world seemed to have a bit of life and excitement, not as horrifying as before. Riesel, descending from the mountains, attracted quite a bit of attention as he entered the town. Where's that guy from? Never seen that face before. Is he a merchant from outside? Not sure. People quietly observed Riesel walking down the street, discussing one after another, casting curious, doubtful, and wary glances at him. Am I really that strange? Riesel was a bit puzzled. Due to the nature of his consciousness being materialized upon arrival, every time Riesel engaged in dimensional travel, the clothes on his body were not those he originally wore, but rather local casual attire provided by the dimensional magic cube upon materializing his consciousness. Therefore, his clothes weren't the noble clothes he wore in the main world but rather a very common kimono. Naturally, he wasn't used to wearing a kimono and wanted to change it, but wasn't it too early? In theory, he should not stand out from the surrounding people. Originally, when he dimensionally traveled to the world of Danmachi, appearing directly in Orario's urban district didn't attract any attention. However, this time, it drew so much attention that it puzzled him. But soon he understood. In his previous life, the Taisho period was over 100 years ago. In this period, unless it was one of those bustling big towns, places like small towns and villages probably had very few people. With fewer people, the interactions between them became more frequent, and the probability of knowing each other also increased significantly. This small town was located at the foot of the mountain, probably far from the big town. Usually, one could only see familiar faces, so it was rare to see strangers. Moreover, Riesel came down from the mountain, traveling a long way. Even if he didn't look dirty, there was a feeling of being dusty and weary, which would attract the attention of the town's residents who rarely saw outsiders. It seemed not so hard to understand. In the end, Riesel let go of his random thoughts and began to stroke his chin, pondering. By the way, where am I now? The most urgent thing now should be to figure out where he was and ideally determine the original work's timeline he was in. Was it before the main story began or after? Selling newspapers. At the right moment, a newspaper vendor passed by Riesel's side. Please give me one. Riesel quickly reacted, stopped the newspaper vendor, and asked for a newspaper. As payment, he simply tossed a gold leaf to the vendor. I can't make change for this, mister. The newspaper vendor was taken aback by Riesel's extravagant gesture. Who would buy a newspaper by casually throwing gold for payment? The poor vendor was just a youth doing odd jobs, how could he have ever seen such a scene before? He was extremely flustered. It's okay, you keep it. Riesel spread out the newspaper, looking at it while speaking indifferently. It's not worth much anyway. He wasn't joking, he genuinely thought gold wasn't worth much. Because the gold he used was created directly through structure system magic. When Yuri taught him structure system magic, she taught him how to transmute various metals like iron, silver, copper, and gold using magic, allowing him to effortlessly produce gold using magic. Alchemy magic was the most common magic in the structure system magic. Since the Akasha continent had already perfected this magic system, transmuting gold using magic was something that even a beginner magician with first-grade compatibility in the structure system could accomplish. As a result, gold was practically worthless on the Akasha continent and didn't even count as a precious metal. The currencies used by various countries were magic gold, magic silver, and magic copper, synthesized using special formulas and structures. These magic metals had a higher value than ordinary gold, silver, and copper. They essentially replaced gold, silver, and copper in various commercial and economic aspects. When made into currency, they would also have special magic runes attached to them, making them impossible to counterfeit. Because of this, magic gold, magic silver, and magic copper were considered precious metals in the Akasha continent. Meanwhile, ordinary gold, silver, and copper had lost their original value, depreciating to the point where they were almost as worthless as roadside pebbles. Therefore, when Riesel said gold wasn't worth much, he wasn't just casually saying it. However, to the ears of the newspaper vendor, it meant something else entirely. Looking at Riesel's demeanor right now, he seemed like a nouveau-riche upstart. If the newspaper vendor were living in modern times, perhaps he would secretly envy and resent Riesel's humble bragging. Unaware that he had become a master of humble brag in the eyes of the newspaper vendor, Riesel was busy flipping through the newspaper. There was plenty of information written on it, like the current date and popular events happening in various big towns, ranging from trivial to involving national affairs. Almost everything was documented. Riesel scanned through it all and finally stopped at a certain spot. The man-eating Mugen train is back in operation. There were no abnormalities after inspection. The font of this news, the phrase man-eating, was especially highlighted, allowing people to sense a faint ironic undertone. It was as if they were saying the so-called man-eating was nothing but baseless talk. Mugen train, hey. He finally figured out which timeline he was in. Did I really arrive during this arc? Riesel mused, quite surprised. After all, the Mugen train arc happened quite far into the main story. I couldn't have arrived at a better time. This arc was a significant part of the main story, as it was also from this point that demons known as upper rank started to appear one after another. Demons of this world were categorized by rank. Some had just been newly transformed into demons, and their power was not too different compared to humans. Others had been demons for a while, having consumed many people, and were known as lower rank with stronger power. Moreover, there was an organization of demons known as the 12 Kizuki, boasting potent demon blood and ranking among the strongest demons, with demons of upper rank and lower rank among them. The 12 Kizuki referred to the 12 most powerful demons, second only to the progenitor of all demons, the Demon King. Among them, 6 were upper rank, and 6 were lower rank. Together, they formed the so-called 12 Kizuki, humanity's greatest predators and enemies. In the original work, a strong upper rank appeared in the Mugen train arc. And now, with Riesel's arrival, he found himself right in the middle of it. Coming early is not as good as coming at the right time, is that what they say? Riesel chuckled, confirming the time and location of the Mugen train's operation as mentioned in the newspaper. Before long, he folded the newspaper, grabbed a map he bought from the market, and headed west. West side of the town, train station. When Riesel arrived here, it was already dusk. Blending into the crowd, he seemed like just an ordinary passenger, casually making his way toward the station. He bought a bento from a little girl selling them, not caring about the gold he handed over, nor the little girl's startled cry of grandma, nor the bewildered looks from passers-by. Riesel simply walked into the station calmly. Everyone around was getting ready to board the train, either lugging large suitcases or with their families in tow. Riesel, on the other hand, was alone, empty-handed, looking more like a sightseer than a traveler. Yet, he dutifully queued up for his ticket, entered the station, and stood on the platform waiting for the train. No one knew his identity, let alone that this seemingly young man possessed power beyond humans. Truth be told, Riesel quite enjoyed the procedure. In his previous life, he was always escorted around, paying attention to appearances wherever he went. His former self could never have imagined that now he could blend in with the ordinary people, squeezing into a train station, and buying a ticket by himself. In the world of Danmachi, there was a time when he led a very ordinary life, but his focus at that time was solely on delving into the dungeon and slaying monsters to become strong as soon as possible before the dimensional travel ended. There was hardly any time for him to indulge in the life of an ordinary person. While on the Akasha continent, let alone ordinary life, with Yuri by his side, he lived more like a noble than the actual noble themselves. I'm just an ordinary guy. Only at times like these would Riesel find himself wanting to say those words to Yuri, who didn't exist in this place. Unfortunately. Well, the journey ahead might not be an ordinary one though. Muttering softly as he looked at his ticket, Riesel's voice was barely audible. Soon enough, with a blast of a train whistle, a train arrived at the station. Chapter 138, Breathing. Mugen train. The name sounded grand, easily leading one to believe it was something extraordinary. However, in reality, the so-called Mugen train merely referred to a train named Mugen, Infinity. This train wasn't unknown, Perhaps it was because trains in this era weren't as prevalent as in later years, so anything related to trains tended to make headlines in newspapers. Recently, something peculiar happened on this train. It was said that passengers aboard the Mugen train, upon its arrival at the terminal station, inexplicably vanished. Even though not everyone on the entire train disappeared at once, every so often, someone would board the train and then mysteriously disappear, with witnesses seeing them get on but no one witnessing them disembarking. This incident caused quite a stir, making headlines several times and garnering significant attention. As a result, a rumor began circulating that said Mugen train will eat people. When Riesel saw the newspaper, the reason for the headline specifically mentioning man-eating was apparent. Thanks to this, the Mugen train underwent repairs recently, only resuming service after maintenance workers confirmed there were no anomalies on board. And so, today marked the Mugen train's first journey back in service. Toot, toot. As the loud whistle pierced the night, the Mugen train, with its dark steel front and wooden carriages, rolled in from the other side of the rail tracks and halted at the platform. People queued up orderly to board, entering the carriages and finding seats. With a ticket in hand, Riesel quickly blended in and settled into a window seat, looking like an aspiring young man about to embark on a journey. Behind him, a few passengers engaged in conversation. Is this the train that eats people? Don't be crazy. How could there be a man-eating train in this world? Well, if it were real, I'd totally want to see which part of the train does the munching. Maybe it's the locomotive. Ha ha ha. The passengers chatted and laughed, treating the man-eating train rumor as amusement. On the other hand, Riesel remained calm and didn't turn to look at them. If these passengers were characters in a horror film, they might be the first batch of sacrificial victims. Ignoring the passengers' conversations, Riesel took out the bento he had bought at the station and prepared to fill his stomach. Unexpectedly, as he opened the bento box, a loud voice echoed from behind. Don't underestimate it. It was genuinely a booming voice, enough to make one's eardrums ache. What the? Hey, who are you? Damn loud. A few passengers behind Riesel seemed to be startled by the sudden outburst. However, the owner of the voice seemed not to pay attention to the reactions of the passengers, continuing to speak. Whenever rumors arise, there's always a reason. We must not treat potentially dangerous situations lightly. We must be extra careful, you hear me? Everyone. As the voice's volume increased, the owner of the voice seemed deliberately intent on shouting, which attracted the attention of the surrounding passengers. What's wrong with this guy? No idea. Let's switch to another carriage. Several passengers suddenly felt the need to keep their distance and quickly left, not staying in this carriage any longer. Apparently, many passengers shared the same sentiment, causing the relatively crowded carriage to suddenly empty out quite a bit, becoming somewhat colder and silent. Only then did Riesel lower his hands from covering his ears, partly narrow his eyes, and turn to look behind him. In the next moment, a figure entered his field of vision. It was a striking young man. The young man had very conspicuous yellow hair, styled quite uniquely, resembling a burning flame, with even some edges of his hair dyed red. He also had thick black eyebrows, sharp eyes, and wore a brown uniform with a white haori adorned with a feather pattern and flames at the edges, giving him a very unique appearance that clearly marked him as a unique character. Of course, this was nothing compared to the large number of bento boxes the young man was carrying in his hands. Seeing this unique young man and the large number of bento boxes he was carrying, Riesel couldn't help but silently remark to himself. Just boarded the train and already encountering an important character. The conspicuous and distinctive appearance of this young man allowed Riesel to recognize him with just a glance. At the same time, paying no attention to the surrounding gazes, the young man continued to wear a smile, calling out to the passengers heading toward another carriage. Remember to be extra careful, and shout loudly if you encounter danger, okay? His booming voice ultimately resulted in those few passengers running even faster. Seeing this scene, the young man merely nodded in satisfaction, as if completing some mission, then turned and sat down. The spot he chose to sit was exactly where those escaping passengers had been sitting, right behind Riesel. Riesel didn't bother to look back at the young man, just lightly smiled and began eating his still warm bento. It was a high-quality beef hot pot bento, albeit slightly cooled down, but it still carried a unique flavor. Since arriving in this world last night, Riesel hadn't eaten a thing, so this bento came just in time to fill his stomach. However, he wasn't fully focused on savoring the bento, instead, he mechanically ate while gradually shifting his attention to the young man behind him. Even though he didn't turn around to look, Riesel could keenly sense that this young man's breathing was different from the others. Specifically, the way he breathed was peculiar. Whether in rhythm or frequency, this young man's breathing differed from that of normal people. While it might not be evident on the surface, in reality, he was inhaling a considerable amount of air into his lungs, yet exhaling very little. It made one wonder where all that air was being sent. So this is the breathing technique of this world. Riesel pondered silently. Indeed, this world also had its own breathing technique, known as breathing style. However, unlike the breathing style of the Akasha continent, which was merely a supplementary method for swordsman's practice, the breathing style of this world served as the main combat support, created to allow humans to confront demons with their frail bodies. Its primary purpose was to enhance heart and lung function, drawing in large amounts of oxygen through a special breathing technique to accelerate blood circulation in a short time. This could significantly boost one's physical abilities in an instant, temporarily granting them physical prowess equivalent to that of demons. Its full name was total concentration breathing. One of the major reasons why the demon slayers in this world could contend with demons, engage in combat with them, and even subdue them, was this total concentration breathing. Most people that were proficient in total concentration breathing were members of an organization called the Demon Slayer Corps. At this moment, the young man sitting behind Riesel, who left a strong impression, was undoubtedly a demon slayer who had mastered a breathing style. Listening to the breath of this young man, Riesel gradually had an idea. Is it like this? Riesel consciously adjusted his breathing to align with the young man. For him, this wasn't difficult. Due to his practice of breaking steel sword style, he had already specialized in breathing techniques. So even though it was a different world, with different effects and functions, his experiences allowed him to quickly grasp this world's breathing technique. Moreover, having an example right near him, it didn't take long for Riesel to adjust his breathing frequency to be almost identical to that of the young man behind him. In this split second, Riesel indeed felt the oxygen he inhaled into his body energizing his bloodstream, accelerating blood flow, and strengthening his heart and lungs, resulting in a surge of power within him. Interesting. Feeling all of this, Riesel's lips curled upward as he breathed in once again. This strange sensation caused him to become somewhat immersed, momentarily ignoring the commotion around him. However, soon enough, a voice startled Riesel awake. It's not just about inhaling a large amount of air, finding the right moments to inhale and exhale is also important, youngster. As that familiar booming voice echoed once again, Riesel was finally brought back to reality. Turning his head to the side, he discovered that someone had already taken a seat next to him. It was the young man with the flame-patterned haori. With a plethora of bento boxes in hand, the young man quietly sat beside Riesel, holding an open bento box, eating while flashing a wide smile at him. Keep it up, keep breathing. The state you were in just now was good. If you can maintain that kind of breathing state, you'll be ready in no time. It was evident that the young man had noticed Riesel mimicking his breathing. However, not only did he not mind, but he also offered guidance, appearing as if he were a mentor. Sorry. Riesel naturally wouldn't continue as if nothing had happened after being caught red-handed by the other party. He apologized, bowing his head slightly toward the young man. Your breathing is quite unique and interesting, so I unconsciously imitated it without asking. My bad. However, the young man seemed unfazed, continuing to eat his bento. Delicious. After taking a bite, the young man immediately praised loudly. Riesel soon noticed that the bento the young man was eating seemed to be from the same place as his. Delicious. Once again, the young man praised loudly before looking at Riesel. I'm Rengoku Kyujura. What is your name, youngster? Needless to say, the young man with the flame-patterned haori was none other than Rengoku Kyujura, the flame Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps, one of the most important characters in the Mugen Train arc. Chapter 139, Flame Hashira. Since demons had a powerful group known as the 12 Kizuki, further divided into upper rank and lower rank, each with distinct strengths and ranks, the Demon Slayer Corps also had hierarchies with differences in status and strength among its members. Demon Slayers affiliated with the Demon Slayer Corps were generally classified into 10 ranks: Kino, Kainoto, Hano, Hinoto, Tsuchino, Tsuchinoto, Kanu, Kanoto, Mizuno, and Mizunoto. Kino was the highest, while Mizunoto was the lowest. Generally, the higher the rank, the stronger they were, and the better their treatment, status, and authority within the Demon Slayer Corps. However, Kino was actually not the highest rank within the Corps. The Demon Slayer Corps was led by a leader known as Master, Oyakata-sama, and the 9 strongest demon slayers known as Hashira, Pillar. The Master was someone who led the entire Demon Slayer Corps, while the Hashira were 9 highly respected swordsmen who supported the Corps, surpassing all other ranks within it. Each Hashira was named after the breathing style they used. For example, there were 5 fundamental breathing styles in this world: flame, water, wind, lightning, and stone. A Hashira who excelled in a particular breathing style would be named accordingly. The Hashira who used flame breathing was called Flame Hashira, the Hashira who used water breathing was called Water Hashira, and so on. Rengoku Kyujura, a demon slayer with a strong personality, was the Flame Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps, one of the strongest swordsmen of this era. At the same time, he stood as the most admirable and awe-inspiring swordsman, ready to confront an upper rank destined to arrive at this Mugen train, a confrontation that would mark the end of his battle and his life. Riesel cast his gaze upon the young man who illuminated the darkness around him like a flame. What's up, bento boy? Kyujura, devouring his bento, oddly addressed Riesel with a peculiar nickname, perhaps noticing that Riesel's bento was from the same place as his. You're the one who looks more like a bento boy. Riesel couldn't help but retort, but decided not to dwell too much on the topic. Well, since someone like you is on this train, it seems like this train is going to run into trouble soon, hey. Upon hearing that, Kyujura's bento eating pace slowed down. It seems you know a thing or two about us. Kyujura nodded earnestly, his smile undiminished. But don't worry. With me here, everything will be all right. Kyujura's words, spoken with such loud volume, attracted more attention than just a passing glance. Nevertheless, he didn't mind if others overheard, and neither did Riesel. This train is packed with 200 people. Can you really handle all of them alone? Riesel asked, continuing to munch on his bento while gazing ahead. Tomu. You think it must be too tough for me? Kyujura admitted calmly, without any hint of evasion. Although he was a Hashira, one of the 9 strongest demon slayers of this era, fighting demons while protecting 200 lives was indeed no easy feat. If they were ordinary demons, it would be manageable, since ordinary demons were no match for the Flame Hashira, as they were simply a matter of one slash. Even the lower ranks wouldn't stand a chance against a Hashira. It was not strange, since to become a Hashira in the Demon Slayer Corps, there were 2 requirements to fulfill. One was to eliminate 50 demons and the other was to defeat a member of the 12 Kizuki. Consequently, most of the Hashira in the Demon Slayer Corps had personally defeated demons from the 12 Kizuki. While they may have only defeated the lower ranks, it was enough to demonstrate their strength. Regardless, the number of people missing on this Mugen train had already exceeded 40. If they had all been eaten by a demon, then this demon involved must be far from ordinary. Just as people gain nutrition from eating meat, demons also grow stronger and stronger from consuming humans. The more they ate, the stronger they became, and the more humans they could consume. If an ordinary demon wanted to engage in mass consumption of humans, they might not be able to digest them all. This meant that since the Mugen train had already consumed over 40 people, the demon on this train should be at least a lower rank due to this level of consumption. While Kyujura may not fear a lower rank, protecting 200 lives while fighting them was no simple task. However, what if the demon on this train weren't a lower rank but an upper rank? Not only were the upper ranks the strongest demons just beneath the Demon King, but their members hadn't changed at all in nearly 100 years. They had never been defeated and had even killed many Hashira, proving their strength was far beyond that of the lower ranks. If the upper ranks were to appear in Mugen train, perhaps Kyujura's own survival would be in question, let alone protecting others. However, even so, I will fulfill my duty and not let a single person lose their life before me. Kyujura crossed his arms and declared loudly toward the train ceiling. You can all rest assured. His statement startled all the passengers in the carriage. In the eyes of others, Kyujura, who had been shouting and saying nonsensical things, seemed no different from a madman. Only Riesel could sense a strong and resolute determination in his seemingly loud words. This young man truly thought like that, determined not to let anyone lose their life in front of him. Even if the demon about to appear was an upper rank, he would fight to the end to protect everyone on this train. Those who felt the strength in his words would probably feel reassured, just as he said. However, Riesel, looking at this young man, had a different thought. You're here to protect everyone, but who's here to protect you? Riesel remarked casually, still munching on his bento. A casual remark, yet it made even the Flame Hashira, who spoke so boldly, pause. Kyujura didn't know that Rizal was also speaking from the heart. After all, in the original work, although Kyujura did manage to keep all 200 people on the train alive, in the end, he lost his own life. Rizal genuinely admired Kyujura, hence why he said such a sentence. Kyujura, for the first time, looked at Rizal, smiling at the youngster before him who was eating a bento just like him. Tomu, the responsibility of the strong is to protect the weak, not to use the talents bestowed by heaven to harm others or enrich one's own pockets. Kyujura's voice was still loud, still powerful, but this time, his voice not only contained power but also conviction. Protecting everyone here is my responsibility. As for himself? Where there is a responsibility, there is belief. What does danger matter? Just stand tall and live with your head held high. Kyujura patted his chest and laughed heartily. Don't you dare underestimate me, bento boy, for my heart is ablaze. Live with your head held high, set your heart ablaze. This was the flame Hashira, Rengoku Kyujura. Rizal fell silent and didn't speak, only quietly finishing his bento, eating until the last bite. Finally, he placed the empty bento box down and, following the customs of this world, clasped his hands together. Clap. Thanks for the meal, Gakiso Samadeshita. In the next moment, Rizal turned his head and faced Kyujura. The responsibility of the strong is to protect the weak, you say? Rizal stared directly at Kyujura's eyes, suddenly smiling. If you say it like that, my responsibility is to protect you, isn't it? What? Kyujura was taken aback. Isn't it? Rizal continued to smile. After all, I'm stronger than you. Even though his words were filled with unusual calmness and indifference, completely unlike Kyujura's loud and powerful tone, it was precisely these calm words that gave Kyujura an incredible sense of security. Stronger than me? Kyujura rarely murmured before revealing a big smile shortly afterward. Like sunlight, like flames, a fierce and cheerful smile. What an incredible youngster! Kyujura laughed heartily. But unfortunately, I am 1,000 times stronger than you imagine, so let me protect you. No, 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 I think I should be 100,000 times stronger than you imagine. Rizal said very earnestly, shaking his head. So, let me protect you. Then I am 1,000,000 times stronger than you imagine. Let me protect you. Then I am 10,000,000 times stronger. Then I am 100,000,000 times. In the end, the two of them carried on with this bizarre argument in the quiet train carriage, leaving people dumbfounded yet with an inexplicable urge to smile. As the argument progressed, a third voice suddenly burst in, overshadowing the two. This lord is 1,000,000,000 times stronger than you both. If you don't believe it, let's settle it once and for all. Accompanied by such a loud shout, a figure rushed extremely fast from behind the glass of the empty carriage door. Boar rush! Boom! Shouting like this, the figure smashed through the carriage door, bringing countless wood chips with it and rushing into the spot where Rizal and Kyujura were. Stop it! You dumbass! Calm down! In a shock. Upon closer inspection, there were actually two people hanging on to this figure, looking like they were about to cry, but their efforts to stop the former were futile. As for the one who crashed through the door, it was someone with a boar head? Mwahaha! Where's the flame Hashira? Let's settle this once and for all. The boar-headed figure stood with hands on hips, laughing loudly. Chapter 140, Three Main Characters. The train carriage, which had turned coldly quiet due to the presence of Kyujura, suddenly became lively again with the abrupt entrance of three people. Hey? Who are you? Kyujura tilted his head, looking at the three newcomers. Rizal also glanced at the three. They were three youths, much like Kyujura himself, each with a striking personality. Hello, Mr. Rengoku. Sorry for the intrusion. One of the three nervously blurted out. He was a youth with black burgundy hair and matching eyes, a hint of innocence in his features, a scar on his left temple, and a pair of Hanafuda earrings with a sun symbol on both of them, dressed in a black uniform with a black and green checkered haori. Someone please stop this fool. I can't stand it anymore. Unlike the former polite speaker, this time it was a youth with the same uniform but wearing a yellow haori adorned with triangular patterns and short golden hair, who paid no attention to Kyujura and continued yelling and screaming. Both of them were clinging to the boar-headed youth who had barged in earlier, desperately trying to restrain him. Unfortunately, they were easily shrugged off. Mwahaha! So, You're the flame Hashira! The boar-headed youth continued to shout enthusiastically. In all honesty, he truly looked like a wild boar. Judging by his voice, he seemed to be of a similar age to the other two, yet he wore no uniform, only a grey boar mask on his head, deer fur draped around his waist, bear fur around his feet, and he was bare-chested, wearing only black baggy hakama pants, giving him a comical appearance. These three youths, whether in appearance or fashion, were completely different from regular people. Such eccentric ways of dressing could either be attention-seeking clownery or some big shots who were indifferent to public opinion. Although they were not yet big shots, these three were important characters in the original work. They were the main characters in the world of Demon Slayer, the focal point of the main story's development, and also members of the Demon Slayer Corps. Oh, it's you. Kyujura's expression shifted from puzzlement to realization upon seeing the burgundy-haired youth. That's right. I'm the Flame Hashira. Kyujura proudly declared upon recognizing his fellow members from the Demon Slayer Corps. However, as he affirmed their camaraderie, the boar-headed youth made a move. Boar rush. Without even thinking, the boar-headed youth charged straight toward Kyujura. Wait. Inashug. Dumbass. The burgundy-haired youth and the yellow-haired youth immediately shouted in succession and moved to restrain the boar-headed youth. Unfortunately, they were too late, as his head had already closed in on Kyujura's face. Fast and forceful, it was truly like a wild boar in a charge. If Kyujura were to be hit, it might be just a moment before he flew out, crashing through the walls of the carriage and flying outside. However. Well, calm down, boar-head boy. Kyujura's calm voice resounded not in front of the boar-headed youth charging ahead, but behind him. I just made an important friend here. Can't let you hurt him, can we? Are you calm now? Thud. Saying so, Kyujura's Haori fluttered slowly as he appeared behind the boar-headed youth, pressing him down on the ground. What? Beneath the boar mask, the boar-headed youth's eyes widened with surprise. So fast. Couldn't see a thing. Just as the burgundy-haired youth and the yellow-haired youth were getting up, they also witnessed this scene and were equally shocked. Only Riesel remained seated, not moving at all. He even ignored the commotion and casually reached out to grab something from the plethora of bento boxes brought by Kyujura. I'm not full yet. Can I have one of these? Riesel casually asked. Of course. Go ahead. Kyujura replied enthusiastically. Thanks. Riesel opened the bento box and started eating. Only then did Kyujura look toward the three bewildered youths still standing there, grinning broadly. Do you guys want some too? My treat. Kyojuro's words were met with three simultaneous shakes of the head like tambourines being played in unison. Is that so? What a pity. Although Kyujura said that, his face still bore a cheerful smile as he let go of the boar-headed youth and sat back beside Riesel. Are you okay? The yellow-haired youth quickly helped up the boar-headed youth before grumbling. I've told you not to be so impulsive. He's a Hashira, and we're just rookies at the lowest rank. How could we possibly win against him? We're really sorry, Mr. Rengoku. The burgundy-haired youth kept bowing over and over to Kyujura. Inashuk didn't mean any harm. Omu. I forgive all of you. Kyujura crossed his arms and nodded solemnly. Are these two your friends? Yes. The burgundy-haired youth quickly introduced his two friends. These two are Agatsuma Zenitsuo and Hashabira Inashuk. Agatsuma Zenitsuo was the yellow-haired youth, while Hashabira Inashuk was the boar-headed youth. The burgundy-haired youth remembered something and introduced himself to the nearby Riesel, who was eating bento. I'm Kamatu Tanjiro, nice to meet you. Kamatu Tanjiro, a new recruit of the Demon Slayer Corps, had only joined a few months ago and was still a novice. However, the special abilities and experiences of this youth might even surpass those of Hashira. Hello. Riesel glanced at Tanjiro and nodded toward him. Of course, besides nodding, he also couldn't help but glance at Tanjiro's back. There, Tanjiro carried a large wooden box, from which a faint and steady breathing could be heard. Riesel glanced at the wooden box for a moment and then looked away. So, young Mizuguchi, how did you end up here? Kyujura asked without turning his gaze away. My name is Kamatu Tanjiro, not Mizuguchi. Tanjiro complained softly, then answered. We were sent here because the victims of the Mugen train have been increasing, so they asked us to support you. To be honest, I didn't want to come at all. Zenitsu chimed in without much confidence. This is a mission that even the Hashira need to handle personally. Sending us low-ranking members to support? We're going to die, aren't we? We're definitely going to die. In the next moment, tears welled up in Zenitsu's eyes, looking like he wanted to escape. On the other hand, Inashuk had already stood up and crossed his arms, menacingly. The demon we need to deal with is this iron beast, right? I figured that out a long time ago. Inashuk said in a loud voice. Yosh! Leave it to me. Or rush! He charged, rushing toward the wall of the carriage. Stop it, you moron! Zenitsu quickly grabbed Inashuk, yelling hysterically. I'm telling you, this is a train. A goddamn train, not some iron beast, and it's definitely not a demon. Tanjiro looked at Zenitsu in disbelief. Why are you giving me that look? Why do you find it so unbelievable? Zenitsu snapped, going crazy. You two are just a couple of hicks who haven't even seen a train before, for fuck's sake. I've had enough of this shit. Ha 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 ha. Kyujuro burst into laughter. You guys are quite amusing. No, they're just plain crazy. Rizel retorted inwardly while quietly eating his bento on the side. After a while, everyone finally calmed down and sat down one after another. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Inashuk stood by the window, vigorously patting it, as if he was challenging the train, making Zenitsu, who sat beside him, look utterly fed up. Tanjiro, on the other hand, sat across from Rizel and Kyujuro, carefully placing the wooden box he had on his back beside him, treating it like the most precious treasure. As Tanjiro said, he and his two friends were sent by the Demon Slayer Corps to support Kyujuro. Because more than 40 people had gone missing on the Mugen train, suspected to have been eaten by demons. Moreover, several demon slayers sent here had also lost contact, so the higher UPS thought Kyujuro might need assistance, and thus they sent Tanjiro and the other two. Although the three of them were only newly recruited demon slayers and their ranks were not high, they had recently encountered a lower rank, lower 5 Rui. In the battle against the lower 5, the Demon Slayer Corps suffered heavy casualties, prompting the master to send 2 Hashira to support. Surprisingly, by the time the 2 Hashira arrived, Zenitsu and Inashuk had already dealt with their respective demons, while Tanjiro had displayed astonishing combat power in his fight against the lower 5, nearly successfully beheading him. As a result, although the ranks of these 3 youths were not high, their combat abilities were impressive, catching the attention of the higher UPS in the Demon Slayer Corps and even gaining high regard from the master and several Hashira. This time, Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inashuk were sent because of a recommendation from a Hashira. I see, Kocher recommended you guys. Kyujuro nodded heavily. In that case, you'll stay with me. I also want to observe you, young Mizuguchi. Upon hearing that, Tanjiro lowered his head, a hint of gloom appearing on his face. Chapter 141, The Beginning. Actually, within the current Demon Slayer Corps, while there were certainly high-ranking people who supported and valued Tanjiro, many others didn't acknowledge him. It was because of a simple reason: Tanjiro had violated the rules of the Demon Slayer Corps. As a Demon Slayer of the Demon Slayer Corps, Tanjiro not only sheltered a demon, who was considered their enemy, but also kept this demon by his side. Yes, the wooden box that he carried around so carefully actually contained a demon. As a result, he faced hostility from many Hashira within the Demon Slayer Corps. Only the Water Hashira and the Insect Hashira could be considered to stand by his side, choosing to support him. As for Kyujuro, the Flame Hashira, although he did not show hostility toward Tanjiro because the master acknowledged his situation, it was still a bit early to say that he had fully accepted Tanjiro and chosen to support him. Kyujuro's current attitude toward Tanjiro could be described as one of temporary observation, as evidenced by when he told Tanjiro that he wanted to observe him. Tanjiro was aware of this, which was why a hint of gloom appeared on his face. Fortunately, he recovered from this gloom very quickly. I believe in Nezuko. Tanjiro declared firmly, placing a hand on the wooden box beside him as he looked at Kyujuro. She will surely gain Mr. Rengoku's approval. Omu. Kyujuro nodded, maintaining a smile. Naturally, I hope so too. Hearing that response, Tanjiro smiled. Generally speaking, Kyujuro was actually quite benevolent toward Tanjiro. He was not like some of the Hashira who blatantly acted hostile toward Tanjiro for sheltering a demon. Perhaps realizing this, Tanjiro began to relax his expression. Are you also a member of the Corps? Tanjiro finally shifted his attention to Rizel. This mysterious young man, who looked only 1 or 2 years older than him, seemed to have a good relationship with the Flame Hashira, but he was not wearing the uniform of the Demon Slayer Corps, leaving him somewhat uncertain about this young man's identity. Tanjiro's question was soon answered by Kyujura. "This bento boy is going to be my Tsugyuko," Kyujura declared loudly. I see. So this big brother is Mr. Rengoku's successor. Tanjiro thought, finally understood. The term Tsugyuko didn't refer to an adopted child but rather to the apprentice and successor of Hashira. They were usually direct subordinates of Hashira, with lower rank but considerable status and influence within the Demon Slayer Corps. They were often regarded as proxies for the Hashira. When Mr. Rengoku said this big brother is his Tsugyuko, does that mean he is Mr. Rengoku's apprentice? So, he is also a user of flame breathing. Tanjiro pondered inwardly. Miss Shinobu mentioned that only someone like Mr. Rengoku who understands flame breathing as a flame Hashira might know something about the technique I used against the lower 5 last time. Does Mr. Rengoku's Tsugyuko also know something about it? With those thoughts in mind, Tanjiro couldn't help but want to know. But before he could ask, Rizel spoke first. No. Rizel denied it briefly. What do you mean by no? Tanjiro was taken aback. I am not Tsugyuko of the Flame Hashira. Rizel glanced at Kyujura, who was smiling beside him, then turned his head to Tanjiro. We just met on this train, and before this, we were strangers and had no idea of each other's existence. Tanjiro's eyes widened as he turned to Kyujura, surprised. Is that true, Mr. Rengoku? Don't worry about these minor details. Kyujura said confidently and firmly. This bento boy will be my Tsugyuko. This is my decision. Upon hearing that adamant answer, Tanjiro couldn't help but be dumbfounded, while Zenitsu, who was currently engaged in a fierce battle with Inashuk, couldn't help but chime in. Doesn't that mean you haven't got his consent yet? Zenitsu's words summarized the situation quite accurately. In any case, Rizel was completely unaware of the matter of being a Tsugyuko from start to finish and had no plans to become Kyujura's apprentice or successor. Since you guys just met on this train, doesn't that mean this big brother here is actually an outsider? Zenitsu, being quite sharp, grasped the crucial point. Everyone instantly fell silent. Are you serious? Involving ordinary people in our mission isn't allowed, right? It could be dangerous. Although timid, Zenitsu was still kind-hearted. Upon realizing that Rizel was just a bystander, he immediately stood up in a panic. Are you seriously discussing our mission and the Mugen train incident so openly in front of an outsider? Aren't you afraid of causing chaos? Zenitsu sure liked to make a fuss, looking like he hadn't seen much of the world. It's okay, you guys don't have to worry about me. Without even setting down his bento box, Rizel spoke calmly to Tanjiro and Zenitsu. Even though I'm not part of the Demon Slayer Corps and indeed just a bystander, don't be fooled by appearances. I do have some understanding of your circumstances. Besides, I can protect myself. Upon hearing that, Zenitsu was speechless and didn't know what to say. Tanjiro also fell into silence, gazing at Rizel, lost in thought. It was Inashuk, who had been wild and erratic just moments ago, now leaning against the window, casually chimed in. He's telling the truth, you know. I can sense it, he is strong, probably even stronger than the Flame Hashira next to him. Oh. Kyujura raised an eyebrow. Oddly enough, Inashuk's nonsensical remark gained Tanjiro's approval. Inashuk is right. Tanjiro nodded earnestly. Big Brother's words just now didn't carry the scent of lies, and I can detect an incredible scent emanating from him. It's the kind of scent that only a swordsman honed through 1,000 trials would have. Kyujura raised his eyebrow again. Seriously? You guys serious? Zenitsu was bewildered by all this, but shortly afterward, he began to ponder as he gazed at Rizel. Now that I think about it, I can hear some strange sounds from him, kinda spooky. Omu. Kyujura crossed his arms, nodding thoughtfully. Only Rizel, upon hearing the words of the three youths, spoke with genuine surprise. Your abilities are indeed quite special. If someone else were to hear the words of Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inashuk here, they would surely find it nonsense. However, Rizel knew that the words of these three had reasons behind them. Whether it was Tanjiro, Inashuk, or even Zenitsu, each of them possessed an exceptionally sensitive and sharp sense. Tanjiro had a sharp sense of smell. Inashuk had an incredibly sensitive sense of touch. Zenitsu had a heightened sense of hearing. These three youths could each perceive information and clues through smell, hearing, and skin sensations that ordinary people couldn't confirm, stronger even than some famously sensitive animals. Precisely because of this, these three became this world's main characters, forming a group not only because they were like-minded, but also because they were equally special. As Riesel was about to say something else, someone walked into the carriage. "Please show your tickets." A train conductor dressed in a train staff uniform spoke weakly and without strength. Everyone in the carriage then noticed the conductor of the train approaching, seeming a bit lackluster, not only speaking sluggishly but also with a weary expression on his face. "Please show your tickets." Undoubtedly, this conductor was here to check passenger tickets. "Yosh, let's get the tickets checked first," Kujura said to everyone. "We'll deal with the rest later." "Yes." Agreeing, the three youths nodded. One by one, the passengers presented their tickets, handing them over to be hole-punched by the conductor. Seeing this scene, Riesel's eyes flickered. As someone familiar with the original work, he knew that this was not a good idea. Neither Kujura nor the three main characters knew that the tickets for the Mugen train had been tampered with by a hidden demon on board, with demon blood mixed into the ink on the tickets. Once the conductor hole-punched the tickets, the hidden demon would use the blood on the tickets to cast an illusion, hypnotizing all the passengers holding tickets. For this reason, this ticket checking was actually dangerous. Nevertheless, Riesel had no intention of stopping it. Because he knew not only the tickets but the entire train had been tampered with by the demon. If the members of the Demon Slayer Corps were not hypnotized but instead took action immediately, it was very likely to provoke an extreme reaction from the hidden demon, leading the demon to attack the entire train directly. Since there were still 200 passengers on this train, if something unexpected happened, it would definitely be a big trouble. In that case, it was better to take matters into his own hands while everyone was hypnotized and asleep so he could defeat the demon without any nuisance. "Please show your ticket." Before long, the conductor had now approached Riesel, asking him to show his ticket. Riesel calmly took out his ticket and handed it to the conductor, allowing him to hole-punch it. He wasn't afraid of being hypnotized. Being completely immune to mental interference from self-redemption and possessing the highest rank development ability of abnormal resistance from Endless, he was impossible to hypnotize. Unfortunately, as he thought like that, Riesel forgot one thing. Within the skill effects of self-redemption, there was an effect that said can accept and enhance the effects of friendly buffs on oneself. In other words, if the hypnosis had no negative effects on him but instead benefited him, he would still be affected, and it would also be enhanced. Ding-ling. In this calm, Tanjiro's Hanafuda earrings adorned with sun symbols gently swayed, emitting a barely perceptible pleasant tinkling sound. Chapter 142, Sun Breathing. Ding-ling. Suddenly, the sound of wind chimes could be heard. Somewhat distant, yet also strangely close. Ding-ling ding-ling. The rhythmic tinkling of the wind chimes seemed to stir and call out to Riesel, it sounded pleasant and captivating. In a daze, Riesel followed the sound of the wind chimes, slowly walking in a particular direction. Wait a section. Where the hell is this? As Riesel snapped back to reality, his mind emerging from the haze, he suddenly realized he was in an utterly unfamiliar place. Mountaintop. Indeed, Riesel found himself atop a mountain. It was a seemingly lofty peak, almost touching the sky, bathed entirely in the sunlight, making the sun appear larger than it actually was. How did I end up here? Riesel frowned. Wasn't he on the Mugen train just a moment ago? 1 second he was getting his ticket checked by the conductor, and the next moment he was in a place like this. Don't tell me I get hypnotized. Is this inside a dream? Realizing what had happened, Riesel felt a twinge of amazement. He, with the highest rank of abnormal resistance development ability and immunity to mental interference from self-redemption, got hypnotized by a demon? He couldn't believe it. Yet, the undeniable reality before him told him that whether he believed it or not, he had indeed entered a dream. The evidence was clear. Despite being on the mountaintop with strong winds and intense sunlight, he couldn't feel the breeze brushing against his body, nor could he sense the warmth of the sun. Fascinating. Confirming this, Riesel murmured to himself. After observing his surroundings for a moment, Riesel quickly reached out his hand and grabbed his own neck, preparing to snap it. This was the most effective way to break free from the demon's dream. Killing oneself in the dream would lead to waking up. However, just as Riesel was about to snap his own neck, a deep voice suddenly reached his ears. Sun breathing consists of 13 sword forms. When this unexpected voice echoed in his ears, Riesel's movement to snap his neck halted. It was only then that he noticed he wasn't alone on this mountaintop. Seemingly out of nowhere, a figure of a man appeared not far from him, facing away, exuding a mysterious aura. He had black hair tied up in a high ponytail with red edges, dressed in a red haori, holding a sword in hand, and standing against the backdrop of the sun in the sky. Ding-ling! The familiar chimes sounded again, but this time it came from the earrings of the mysterious man. No, mysterious swordsman. On the swordsman's ears were a pair of Hanafuda earrings with sun symbols. When one looked carefully, these earrings were undoubtedly identical to the ones Tanjiro wore on his ears. You! Riesel paused his words, staring at the swordsman standing before him, facing the sun, unable to move. Hu! Haa! In the next moment, the swordsman began to breathe in and out without any apparent reason. Taking in large amounts of air, the swordsman maintained his position with his back to Riesel and began demonstrating a strange breathing technique right in front of him. Clearly, this breathing resembled Kyujura's flame breathing in some ways, yet it was entirely different. Kyujura's breathing was powerful, with each exhale bringing a faint sensation of heat as if breathing out flames rather than air. While the breathing of this swordsman indeed felt similar to Kyujura's flame breathing, powerful and emitting a slight heat like flames compared to his flame breathing, this swordsman's breath not only carried the burning and destructive power of flames but also a sense of endless energy. As the swordsman breathed toward the sun, the mysterious aura emanating from him intensified, as if he were no longer human but had transformed into a spirit. Like a spirit, the unknown swordsman began to dance. Sun breathing, first form, dance. With a faint whisper, the swordsman released a slash forward. Swish! It was an arcing slash. His slash was swift, appearing like a fleeting ray of sunlight. As it cut through the air, flames suddenly ignited, forming the trajectory of a sun, slicing through the void and the atmosphere. Sun breathing, second form, clear blue sky. The swordsman smoothly transitioned into the next attack, his sword turning naturally. Leaping high into the air, he twisted his body and brought down the flaming sword from above, carving another sun trajectory. As it slashed onto the ground, the flames transformed into a flaming wheel, spreading out in all directions. Wherever the flaming wheel passed, everything was scorched by the flames, leaving behind charred marks and terrifying sword scars that seemed capable of cleaving the entire mountaintop, displaying astonishing power. In this manner, the swordsman continued to dance, repeatedly showcasing his swordsmanship. Raging Sunday. Fake Rainbow. Fire Wheel. Burning Bones, Summer Sunday. Sunflower Thrust. Solar Heat Haze. Setting Sun Transformation. Beneficent Radiance. Sun Halo Dragon Head Dance. Flame Dance. Each dance represented a sword form. Each slash represented a sword technique. The swordsman repeatedly practiced these 12 sword forms, facing the sun, with his back to Riesel, enveloped in flames, dancing like a flame spirit. No. He was not a flame spirit, but a sun spirit. Riesel began to feel a sense of illusion as if this swordsman had flown out from the rising sun he faced, even though flames were rolling around his body, but wherever his sword passed, it seemed capable of cutting through the air, the earth, everything, burning all existence, yet strangely, it didn't evoke fear but rather a marvelous sense of closeness to nature and a mysterious captivated feeling. It wasn't flames that destroyed everything, but a radiant flame that expelled every evil. It wasn't just high temperatures that evaporated matter, but a holy light that purified vile darkness. Hu! Haa! As the swordsman danced amidst the billowing flames, he continuously unleashed sharp and powerful swordsmanship while breathing rhythmically. Although the breaths were not very pronounced, they echoed distinctly in Riesel's ears, allowing him to directly feel the intricacies of this breathing. Watching all this, feeling all this, unknowingly, Riesel slowly released his hand from his neck. He immersed himself in the swordsman's sword dance. He was deeply attracted by the swordsmanship practiced by the swordsman, unable to look away, unable to remember anything else. Every slash, every sword form wielded by the swordsman, resembling the sun spirit, deeply imprinted in Riesel's mind, imprinted deep in his heart, making him unable to forget no matter how hard he tried. Gradually, even Riesel was drawn by the wondrous breathing sound echoing in his ears, unconsciously mimicking it. Hu! Haa! Just as he had imitated Kyujura's breathing on the train, Riesel began to mimic the swordsman's breathing. Regardless of frequency, number of times, amplitude, timing, quantity, or rhythm, Riesel unintentionally drew closer and closer to the swordsman. Ba dump, ba dump. Eventually, the beating of his heart began to accelerate, while the flow of his blood also quickened. His lungs expanded continuously, allowing Riesel to inhale larger and fiercer air. Breathing in such large quantities of air, under normal circumstances, he might have worried about oxygen toxicity, but at this moment, he abandoned all thoughts and focused wholeheartedly on following the swordsman's breathing, immersing himself in the other's sword dance, almost unable to control himself. In this state, Riesel failed to notice that as his breathing changed, the power surging from within him became stronger and more intense. It was a power far beyond what he had experienced while imitating Kyujura's flame breathing. A breathing style far more powerful than flame breathing, far surpassing the breathing style mastered by any Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps, appeared before Riesel's eyes. It seemed as if the swordsman intentionally wanted to pass on this breathing style to Riesel, moving over and over again, demonstrating tirelessly. After hundreds of repetitions, the swordsman seemed to have endless energy, not tired at all, not fatigued in the slightest. His hand holding the sword didn't even tremble, and his posture remained flawless from start to finish. However, there was only one problem. Sun breathing consists of 13 sword forms. Every time he moved, the swordsman mechanically uttered that sentence, but from start to finish, only 12 sword forms were displayed in front of Riesel by the swordsman. Dance, clear blue sky, raging sun, fake rainbow, fire wheel, burning bones, summer sun, sunflower thrust, solar heat haze, setting sun transformation, beneficent radiance, sun halo dragon head dance, and flame dance. Clearly, the sword forms demonstrated by the swordsman remained only these 12, never reaching the 13th sword form after countless repetitions. Yet, the swordsman repeated that sentence time and again, telling Riesel repeatedly that the breathing style named sun breathing indeed consisted of 13 sword forms. Why? Perhaps only Riesel, who was familiar with the original work, would know why. Just as Riesel's breathing synchronized completely with the swordsman's, and all the swordsman's sword forms were engraved into his mind, etched into the depths of his heart, the swordsman finally stopped moving. "I'll leave it to you." At the very end, Riesel heard that barely audible murmur from the swordsman. Ding-ling. As the swordsman's earrings swayed, the sound of wind chimes resounded again. Riesel felt as if the scene before him was fading away, his consciousness gradually drifting, slowly disappearing from this dream. Chapter 143, Fierce Battle in the Train. After slumbering for who knew how long, Riesel's consciousness began to return. As the dream faded away, Riesel could clearly feel himself returning to reality, back to the state of sitting on the train. It was as if he had been dozing off, his body gently swaying with the movement of the train, the sound of the train whistle becoming clearer in his ears. Everything became real again, unlike in the dream where even the wind and sunlight had no sensation. However, with the return of sensation and senses coming back, Riesel was surprised to find that his surroundings had drastically changed. Boom! A tentacle resembling a meat pillar swung past him, hitting an empty seat and smashing it to pieces. The once somewhat desolate wooden carriage now resembled the inside of a giant intestine, with wooden walls transformed into fleshy walls from which flesh-like tentacles sprouted and thrashed wildly. What the hell? Riesel looked at the scene with a hint of astonishment. Hey! You finally woke up, bento boy. Just as Riesel felt perplexed, a familiar hearty voice reached his ears. Not far away, Kyujura stood, wielding a Japanese sword known as katana with a black and red blade, fighting off tentacles attacking from all directions. Huu! Haa! Kyujura assumed an III stance, lowering his body, inhaling a large amount of air, simultaneously breathing and murmuring. Flame breathing, 4th form, blooming flame undulation. Flames erupted from Kyujura's sword as he swung it like a windmill, slashing extremely fast in all directions. In an instant, a vortex of flames appeared in the carriage filled with flesh walls and tentacles, blasting outward with his slash. Puchi! All the incoming tentacles were instantly cut into pieces as if melted by the high temperature of the vortex of flames. Kyujura continued to wield his blazing sword, relentlessly cutting through the attacking tentacles. Swish! Swish! Even so, the tentacles on the train seemed endless. Just as they were cut off, new ones immediately sprouted from the flesh walls and swarmed toward Kyujura. Just as Kyujura was about to counterattack, a silver flash of light passed by at a high speed. Puchi! Although the silver light merely grazed the tentacles, they were immediately shredded into countless pieces as if cut by a cutting machine. Riesel, holding a bright silver short sword, appeared behind Kyujura as if teleporting, his speed too fast for Kyujura to react. Seeing Rizal, Kyujura's pupils contracted for a moment before a big smile spread across his face. Ah! Just like young Mizuguchi, Crying Boy and Boarhead Boy said, Bento Boy, you're really something. After saying that, Kyujura directly exposed his back to Rizal, swiftly slicing through the tentacles that attacked him with a flick of his blazing sword. Rizal seemed even more relaxed than Kyujura, just standing still, casually swinging his sword with fast slashes. Each tentacle that came at him was effortlessly sliced into pieces by the silver light flashing extremely fast. What's the situation now? Rizal took a moment to ask Kyujura behind him. Tomu. It's not good at all. Kyujura responded straightforwardly. In short, it seems we've been targeted by the demon hidden on this train since we boarded. When the conductor checked our tickets, we all got ensnared by the demon's blood demon art and ended up in some kind of dream. If young Mizuguchi hadn't snapped us out of it, things could have gotten messy. While everyone was trapped in the dream, Tanjiro was the first to figure out how to break free and return to reality, thereby awakening everyone else. In truth, the reason everyone was under remote hypnosis was because the tickets were contaminated with demon blood. Tanjiro managed to burn everyone's ticket, allowing them to wake up except for Rizal. Since Rizal was not truly under the demon's hypnosis, he remained in the dream, causing Kyujura to stay and fight the tentacles to protect him. Without a doubt, this development was almost identical to the original work. Nevertheless, as Rizal suspected, the demon behind the scenes didn't just tamper with the tickets but also manipulated the entire train. The reason the train looked grotesque, turning into flesh walls with tentacles everywhere, was that the demon on this Mugen train had merged with the train itself, turning it into his own body. In other words, where Rizal and the others were now was not the Mugen train, but within the demon's body disguised as it. It seems the demon wants to devour all 200 passengers on the train at once, so we decide to split up. Some are going to find that demon and behead them, while others are protecting passengers in other carriages. Kyujura explained as he pushed forward like a pillar of fire, slashing through countless tentacles all the way, even cutting through several other carriages. In these carriages, where tentacles were reaching for sleeping passengers, they all turned into meat chunks shattered by Kyujura's swift charge and slashes. He continued to charge and slash through several carriages in succession, then in the blink of an eye, turned back like a pillar of fire, his speed leaving people amazed. That's it. The situation is very serious. Despite saying that, the smile never left Kyujura's face, giving off not a hint of tension but rather a feeling of being in complete control. Seeing this, Rizal responded with a faint smile as well. With a flicker of his body, he turned into a hurricane, rushing out in an instant, and passing through several carriages. Piuchi, Piuchi, Piuchi. Where the hurricane passed, sword lights burst out like a storm, slashing through tentacles reaching for passengers, reducing them to pieces. In no time, Rizal returned to his original position. Along the way, not only were the tentacles sliced apart, but even the flesh walls were cut into a bloody mess, temporarily preventing their regeneration. Hey! Kyujura's expression changed once again, clearly shocked. It couldn't be helped, since the strength displayed by Rizal greatly surpassed his imagination. Such strength would undoubtedly qualify him as a Hashira within the Demon Slayer Corps. No, even as a Hashira, it seemed that Rizal at this moment surpassed even that. I told you, didn't I? Rizal paid no heed to the surprise he caused Kyujura with his performance. Fighting a powerful demon while protecting 200 passengers at the same time is challenging even for you. Yet, I admit my shortcomings. Kyujura nodded in acknowledgement before exclaiming loudly. But it's all right. No matter what, I will protect everyone here. I won't let anyone die, definitely. In the next moment, the flames on Kyujura's body suddenly burned even more fiercely. As he prepared to exert himself both mentally and physically, ready to make a desperate effort, Rizal stopped him. No need for that. Rizal said frankly. We're inside the demon's body, so as long as we stay on this train, we'll be constantly fighting this demon and struggling to protect the passengers inside. Instead of just defending, we should focus on finding a way to evacuate them. As if understanding Rizal's words, the surrounding flesh walls writhed, immediately sprouting countless tentacles, attacking him. Whoosh! A silver light suddenly flashed, cutting off all the tentacles in one strike, causing them to fall to the ground. Boom! Meanwhile, Kyujura once again transformed into a fiery pillar, dashing extremely fast through several carriages, cutting off tentacles one by one, before returning to Riesel's side. I understand what you mean, but the train is moving at its fastest speed. How do we evacuate 200 passengers from here? Kyujura asked, his sword ignited, raising the temperature inside the entire carriage. Simple, let's stop the train first. Riesel answered calmly, swinging countless sword lights to cut off tentacles and flesh walls, then turning his head to Kyujura. Later, I will stop or even dismantle this train. When that happens, you must evacuate all the passengers as soon as possible. Is that all right? Do you have a way to stop this train? Kyujura paused for a moment, then without hesitation, he promised. No problem. I'll get all the passengers out as soon as the train stops. Good. After cutting off several tentacles, Riesel turned around, looked at Kyujura, and warned. Be careful. Who? Kyujura grinned, without looking back. You too. Riesel smiled softly, then disappeared on the spot. Feeling Riesel's aura disappear behind him, Kyujura's smile grew stronger on his face. The journey this time is truly amazing. Getting to know such an outstanding friend, I, Rengoku Kyujura, feel deeply honored. Inside his mind, Kyujura was overjoyed, but at the same time, he also felt a bit puzzled. But I can't help but feel that Bento Boy's breathing has changed somehow. What a strange feeling. Maybe just my imagination. As Kyujura thought like that, tentacles came at him again. Tomu. Let's focus on completing the mission first. Kyujura concentrated, pushing away distracting thoughts, enveloped by flames, rushing toward other carriages. Toot. In the wilderness, atop the railroad tracks, a train sped through the darkness, emitting bursts of steam whistles and the sound of its wheels. However, this train was now covered in flesh walls everywhere, looking somewhat grotesque and nauseating. Inashok. Hurry up! At this moment, Tanjiro was running on the roof of the train, shouting at the boar-headed youth beside him as he ran. I know. Watch me. Boar rush. Inashok wielded two saw-like swords, charging recklessly toward the front of the train. Boom! However, just then, a figure smashed through the train's wall, leaping onto the heads of the two. Tanjiro looked up, astonished. By Big Brother. Chapter 144, Lower 1. The one who flew out from the Mugen train was naturally Riesel. He broke through the train's flesh walls and soared out from within, leaping high in front of Tanjiro and Inashok, like an arrow released, slicing through the night sky and landing ahead on the train tracks. Toot! At the same time, the train, with its long whistle and the sound of its wheels, rushed like a rampaging steel beast toward Riesel, who had landed on its tracks. Danger! Seeing this scene, Tanjiro, standing on the roof of the train, was greatly terrified. Oi! Bento Eater! Get out of there fast! Even Inashok was panicked, roaring angrily in Riesel's direction. Although both of them were from the countryside and grew up in the mountains without much exposure to the world, it didn't stop them from understanding how dangerous Riesel's current actions were. It was obvious that being hit by such a large steel vehicle would result in serious injuries, not to mention that the train was still moving at an astonishing speed. Once hit, it was absolutely impossible for Riesel to survive without severe injuries. Moreover, the train was now merged with a demon, making it basically impossible to stop, not even to slow down. Riesel's act of landing on the train tracks and standing in front of the train was tantamount to seeking death. Even so, Tanjiro and Inashok were shocked to find that Riesel not only didn't choose to evade but instead stood firm, facing the rampaging steel beast heading toward him with an extremely calm expression. Damn it! Inashok couldn't help but rush forward. Not only him, but Tanjiro also drew his black sword and charged forward. Inashok! Tanjiro shouted anxiously. We have to cut off the demon's head before Big Brother gets hit. I know. Inashok responded loudly. Both of them tightened their grip on their swords, emitting a barely noticeable warmth. Their swords were known as Nichiren swords, weapons specially made for the Demon Slayer Corps, forged from special materials called scarlet crimson iron sand and scarlet ore that absorbed sunlight, possessing properties that emitted energy similar to sunlight. The reason why the Demon Slayer Corps could hunt demons was firstly, because its members all mastered the breathing style, which allowed them to unleash powers comparable to those of demons, and secondly, because of these Nichiren swords. Generally speaking, demons were unkillable as long as they were not exposed to direct sunlight. Not only their injuries would quickly heal, but even limbs could be reattached or regenerated effortlessly. It was accurate to say they had an immortal body. However, if their head was severed by Nichiren swords, they would be killed instantly, without a chance of recovery. After all, this weapon was forged from special ore that absorbed sunlight. Cutting off a demon's head with a Nichiren sword was almost the same as exposing them to sunlight. Therefore, when demon slayers were successfully selected to join the Demon Slayer Corps, they each received a Nichiren sword tailored for them as their weapon for slaying demons. Now, since the demon controlling the Mugen train had merged with the train itself, turning it into the demon's body, there must be a vital point somewhere on the train similar to a demon's neck. By severing this point and cutting off the demon's head merged with the train, they could kill him and stop the train. Tanjiro and Inosuke had climbed onto the roof for this purpose, while Zenitsu remained inside the carriage, protecting the passengers. However, now that Rizel suddenly appeared and was about to be hit by the train, the two of them had to behead the demon as soon as possible and slay him, only then could they save Rizel. Unfortunately, they barely had time to find the demon's vital point, let alone cut off his neck. Tanjiro and Inosuke knew that the demon's neck was likely buried under the front of the train, so they tried to locate and sever it as soon as possible, but time simply didn't allow it. No. It's too late. Quick, dodge. Bento eater. Tanjiro and Inosuke could only run on the roof of the train, shouting urgently. In this situation, Rizel, bathed in the glaring light of the charging train, slowly raised one hand. Decompose. A red vortex surged in Rizel's palm. Toot. With the whistle of the roaring locomotive, the train finally collided, hitting Rizel's body hard. Tanjiro and Inosuke showed expressions of despair one after another. However, the scene of blood splattering and flesh being torn apart they imagined did not occur. Buzz. With a sound resembling a tremor, Rizel's hand, reaching out toward the oncoming train, first made contact with the locomotive, allowing the red vortex to pass through his palm like a hurricane, instantly transmitting to the entire body of the train. Following that, Rizel suddenly punched with his fist. Bang! Amidst an ear-splitting roar, the train, completely covered by red waves, was dismantled under the influence of Rizel's fierce punch. Bang! 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 With a series of exploding sounds, the train burst apart section by section, the front separated, and the carriages disconnected from each other, becoming fragmented. Rizel did not completely decompose the train into nothingness, he just roughly dismantled it. After all, there were passengers on the train, including Kyujura and the three main characters. He didn't want to risk decomposing them all into nothingness. Therefore, he only dismantled the train, causing the front to separate, the carriages to disconnect, and the wheels to burst, turning into fragments falling all around the train tracks, making various parts fly in the air. Undoubtedly, this scene was an exceptionally magnificent sight. Of course, Tanjiro and Inosuke, standing on top of the train, naturally were thrown off. Are you fucking kidding me? Witnessing the spectacular scene of a train being crushed by a punch before their eyes, Tanjiro and Inosuke found themselves flung into the air, screaming in shock as their shouts echoed far into the distance. Naturally, neither of them knew what magic was. In their eyes, Rizel appeared to have punched the oncoming train with his bare fist, causing it to fall apart. In reality, when Rizel used decomposition magic on the train, it had already begun to decompose. However, because he only broke down its structure, the train hadn't completely decomposed yet. It was like a set of building blocks, before being knocked over, it could still maintain its train appearance. Consequently, Rizel simply punched it, breaking apart the blocks and causing the train to be dismantled. Nonetheless, Tanjiro and Inosuke were oblivious to the complexities of the situation. All they knew was that Rizel had punched the train and it fell apart. That was way too strong, right? Too strong, wasn't it? Too strong. Tanjiro continued shouting like crazy while still in midair. That guy is amazing. Amazing, I tell you. Mwahaha. He blew up the Lord of the Land, Santaru. Inosuke danced around in midair excitedly, thoroughly thrilled. I'm Tanjiro. Tanjiro protested. After flying through the air for a while, the two of them finally landed on the ground together. Tanjiro. Inosuke. At this moment, Zenitsu emerged from the wreckage of the train carriage, carrying a wooden box on his back, tears streaming down his face in a mixture of fear and relief. TTTT the train fell apart. It derailed. Am I missing any body parts? Am I? Please tell me I'm not. That was scary. Zenitsu cried out in a dramatic display, genuinely believing that the train had derailed and worried he might have lost a limb. Meanwhile, Kyujura, upon sensing the train start to stop just as Rizel had said, wasted no time in unleashing the full power of flame-breathing, fourth form, blooming flame undulation. A vortex of flames spiraled through every carriage, stabilizing the derailed train with the impact on each carriage, bringing it to a halt on the train tracks. So it really did dismantle. Kyujura remarked, emerging from one of the carriages. He strolled leisurely as he surveyed the chaotic scene around him, especially the dismantled train, before letting out a hearty laugh. As for Rizel, he glanced briefly at the locomotive, which had been flung off the train tracks and lay beside him. Ugh! Ah! In the next moment, flesh walls surged continuously from the locomotive. How is this possible? How could something like this happen? Within the flesh walls, a boy's voice cried out in agony and disbelief. Without a doubt, this was the demon's voice that merged with the Mugen train. Rizel happened to know the identity of this demon. Lower 1, in Mu, the most powerful lower rank among the 12 Kizuki, second only to the 6 upper ranks, possessed the power to hypnotize people and manipulate dreams at will. On top of that, he was the only surviving lower rank at present. Due to the lower 5 being indirectly defeated by the 3 main characters and some lower ranks eventually being hunted down by the Hashira, Inmu was the last of his kind. This was because the Demon King, the progenitor of all demons in this world, had recently disbanded the lower ranks, executing most of them, except for Inmu. As the only surviving lower rank, Inmu indeed had some amazing abilities. Being able to hypnotize the Flame Hashira and the 3 main characters, as well as merge with a train, this kind of ability was beyond the reach of ordinary demons. Unfortunately, this last surviving lower rank would also meet his end here. Impossible. I haven't lost yet. I must devour everyone here. Kill the Hashira and that little rascal with earrings. Gaya. Inmu struggled, causing the locomotive to lurch. Tap 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 tap. At the same time, Rizel calmly approached the locomotive step by step, his face serene like a still lake. Chapter 145, A Nightmare. As Rizel approached, Inmu naturally felt it. Felt what? Naturally, he felt fear. As a lower rank closest to the upper ranks, few things could make Inmu afraid. In his eyes, demon slayers seemed no different from ordinary humans. He was not even afraid of Hashira at all and even wanted to kill them to gain merit. For demons, the Demon Slayer Corps, which had always been hunting them, was undoubtedly quite annoying. However, since the Demon King had long ordered the hunting of Hashira, Inmu had never feared them. Otherwise, he wouldn't have devised a plan to merge with the Mugen train and devour the Flame Hashira along with the other 200 passengers. As long as he could kill a Hashira and consume a large number of humans, he could become stronger and receive the Demon King's reward. Perhaps he could even launch a bloody battle for a position change within the upper ranks, becoming a newcomer in the upper ranks that had not had a member change in over 100 years. Therefore, Inmu had always considered his move on the Mugen train with a mindset geared toward entertainment and enjoyment. After all, what he liked most was witnessing the suffering and despair of others. Whether it was the Hashira or the 200 passengers, their agonizing struggles before death would surely be interesting. Every time Inmu thought of that, he felt a sense of pleasure. Unfortunately, the reality proved that even demons like Inmu, when faced with incomprehensible things, would still feel fear when it was time to fear. The moment Rizel stopped and dismantled the entire train with a single punch, it became truly incomprehensible to Inmu. Especially since the train had already merged with his body, he could feel even more vividly the inexplicable events that had occurred in that split second. It felt as if his whole body was forcibly torn apart by an unknown power, with even the very things that constituted his existence being invaded, controlled, and ripped apart. It was as absurd as watching his own cells being pulled out of his body one by one while wide awake. As a result, when Inmu saw Rizel approaching him, his mind exploded. Eyes of forced unconscious sleep. With Inmu's yell, meat pillars suddenly shot out from the locomotive, rushing toward Rizel. On the meat pillars, countless eyes were growing, staring straight at Rizel, emitting a strange wave that projected onto his body through their gaze. Demons naturally possessed powers beyond those of humans, powers that ordinary humans couldn't compare to. In addition to abilities such as an undying body and superhuman physical prowess, some demons' bodies also possessed special abilities like magic or superpowers, some with strange effects, others akin to ultimate techniques, offering a wide range of possibilities. It was known as the Blood Demon Art, a special ability exclusive to demons. Demons possessing Blood Demon Art generally had stronger abilities than those without. Some particularly powerful demons could even possess multiple Blood Demon Arts. Inmu's Blood Demon Art could force his targets into sleep, causing them to experience dreams. What made it terrifying was his ability to control the people, events, and objects within these dreams, keeping those affected by his Blood Demon Art forever immersed without their knowledge. Once affected by his Blood Demon Art, no matter who it was, their consciousness would completely separate from their physical body, unable to move as long as they didn't wake up from the dream. In order to wake up from the dream, there was usually only one way. That was for the person trapped in the dream to muster the courage to commit suicide. Only then could they wake up from the dream completely on their own. If Tanjiro hadn't woken up this way and burned Kyujura's and the others' tickets, they wouldn't have awakened. Inmu's Blood Demon Art was truly powerful, as evidenced by the 200 passengers on the train remaining asleep, lost in their dreams even as the train caused a significant commotion by derailing and had its carriages separated. Now, Inmu used this powerful Blood Demon Art on Riesel, known as Eyes of Forced Unconscious Sleep. This wasn't performed through blood-soaked tickets like the previous long-distance method but rather through direct eye contact for hypnosis. In terms of effect and power, it was definitely much stronger than the previous long-distance hypnosis. Unless eye contact was avoided, the success rate of this direct hypnotic technique was 100%, which meant it was unstoppable. Even the upper ranks, if caught in this hypnosis, would surely fall. This monster has already locked eyes with me, so he will definitely. As Inmu thought like that, he froze and suddenly widened his eyes. In front of him, Riesel indeed met the gazes of countless eyes growing on the meat pillars, but instead of being hypnotized, he only furrowed his brow, his face twisted in disgust. Disgusting shits. After muttering that, Riesel brandished his bright silver short sword, suddenly unleashing several sword lights at incredible speed. Swish, 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 swish. Several meat pillars were instantly destroyed by the sword lights, cut into countless pieces, and scattered on the ground. Eyes of Forced Unconscious Sleep. Inmu screamed hysterically and caused the locomotive to grow several more meat pillars, making the eyes on the meat pillars all look at Riesel, releasing the full power of hypnosis. Unfortunately, this power couldn't even make Riesel's footsteps falter. Riesel seemed to feel nothing, calmly stepping forward toward Inmu, step by step. Inmu stared blankly at Riesel's figure, who, compared to himself transformed into a massive train, was undoubtedly exceedingly small. Is this a nightmare? Inmu whispered in a daze. With those final words, a red vortex swiftly crashed into the locomotive where Inmu's head was. Boom! This time, Riesel showed no mercy, delivering maximum output, using decomposition magic to its peak, and decomposing the entire locomotive into nothingness. Bzzzt. With the disappearance of the locomotive, the flesh walls that were still squirming in the carriages stopped, withered, and then completely reduced to ashes. Ultimately, decomposition magic far exceeded the regeneration limit of a lower rank, rendering Inmu unable to recover at all. And so, the last surviving lower rank of the 12 Kizuki met a tragic end. As for Riesel, he still stood in place, looking at the huge pit that appeared with the disappearance of the locomotive. His eyes were calm, devoid of pity. Man-eating demon, this is the end you deserve. After leaving those indifferent words, Riesel turned around and left, leaving the empty pit behind. At last, the man-eating incident on the Mugen train had come to a close. Not only had the ringleader demon been slain, but none of the 200 passengers were harmed, and the members of the Demon Slayer Corps emerged unscathed as well. Such results could only be deemed a perfect victory. Kyujura had already been in contact with the Demon Slayer Corps, requesting them to send personnel to clean up the aftermath, escort the 200 passengers back, and return the dismantled Mugen train to the station. Unfortunately, the locomotive had vanished, leaving only the carriages and parts of the train behind. It remained uncertain whether it could be repaired and put back into operation in the future. Of course, these were matters of the government, unrelated to Riesel or the Demon Slayer Corps. After all, the Demon Slayer Corps was an organization not recognized by the authorities. Naturally, they had no reason to worry about matters that concerned the government. While waiting for the personnel of the Demon Slayer Corps to arrive and handle the aftermath, Riesel found himself entangled with Kyujura. Let's go, Bento boy. Kyujura appeared before Riesel, arms folded, staring straight ahead and shouting loudly. Come back with me to the Demon Slayer Corps. Shouting like that, Kyujura's gaze was fixed on the other side of the mountain. Hey, where are you looking? I'm right here. Rizal stood behind Kyujura, rolling his eyes at Kyujura's body blocking his way. Come to the core with me. Kyujura continued to face the distance, shouting loudly. Rest assured. I will recommend you to the master. Rest assured my ass. Rizal retorted and pushed aside Kyujura blocking his path. Things haven't even ended yet, and you're already asking me to rest assured. Upon hearing that, Kyujura stopped his antics. Haven't ended. Kyujura turned around to look at Rizal, his face confused. Even the three main characters, who were playfully approaching, were now drawn to Rizal's words. Didn't Big Brother already take down the demon? Tanjiro asked with surprise as he grabbed his wooden box from Zenitsu, who hesitated to release it. Are there more demons? Zenitsu, no longer vying for the box with Tanjiro, looked wary. More demons? Ha! Bring it on! Whether it's a train or whatever. Watch as this Lord Hashabira smashes them with his fists. Ina shook, his emotions soaring, seemed ignited by Rizal's earlier display. He even threw down his beloved swords on the ground, and clenched his fists, eager to try. Seeing the four's reaction, Rizal answered calmly. It's an upper rank. An upper rank is coming. Upon hearing his answer, everyone's faces quickly stiffened. Especially Kyujura, his expression changed suddenly, and the usual cheerfulness vanished. Tanjiro, Zenitsu and Inashuk had even more extreme reactions. Coming. Tanjiro's nose twitched and his face changed dramatically. What's that sound? It's approaching extremely fast. Zenitsu covered his ears, his face turning pale. Over there. Inashuk quickly picked up his swords and pointed fiercely in a certain direction. Whoosh! Before long, the sound of wind breaking spread from afar to near as a figure shot toward them like a cannonball. Boom! As the figure landed with a resounding crash, it stirred up a deafening explosion in a cloud of dust. Oh! Inmyu died! A young voice echoed from the dust. Hat, lower rank is just lower rank after all. Can't even step up to the plate and handle the true strong ones. Saying such words, the figure slowly emerged from the dust, and simultaneously, a powerful murderous intent instantly filled the air. Chapter 146, Upper 3. This is. As astonishing murderous intent permeated the entire area, Tanjiro, Zenitsu and Inashuk couldn't help but take a step back, their pupils trembling, seemingly shaken. Since they each possessed exceptionally keen senses, murderous intent, which even some ordinary people could sense, undoubtedly had a magnified effect on these three youths, causing them a lot of distress. In this situation, Tanjiro unconsciously gripped his sword, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Inashuk resembled an enraged beast, his entire body bristling with sweat-soaked fur. Zenitsu hugged his head and squatted directly on the ground, his face pale, letting out a sharp scream of fear. You three, step back. Even Kyujura's expression was grave as he shouted at the three. He quickly stood in front of Tanjiro, Inashuk and Zenitsu, body lowered, hand already resting on the hilt of his sword. Only Rizal remained calm, gazing ahead with cold eyes. In front of them, the figure emerging slowly from the dust finally revealed his full form. He was a young man with peach-red short hair, golden eyes, deep blue tattoos covering his entire body, and fingernails painted blood red. He wasn't tall and looked even younger than Kyujura, wearing a short, sleeveless dark purple-pink haori with an open chest, prayer beads hanging from his ankles, and bare feet. He looked like a martial artist, clearly someone not to be trifled with. However, that wasn't the most important part. What was most striking was the characters engraved in his eyes. In his pair of golden eyes, 2 Japanese characters were engraved. Left eye, 3. Right eye, upper rank. This was the characteristic of the 12 Kizuki, symbols of their rank and identity. Upper ranks have characters engraved in both eyes. Lower ranks have characters engraved in one eye. Needless to say, the demon before them, without a doubt, was an upper rank. Upper 3. Kyujura muttered solemnly. Upper 3, meaning the third strongest demon aside from the Demon King, was now standing before them. I am Akaza. The upper 3, Akaza, nonchalantly revealed his name. However, as he looked toward Rizal and Kyujura, his face broke into a smile full of fighting intent. I see. Akaza seemed to understand something, his smile turned aggressive. To think there are two guys with such fighting spirit here. No wonder a lower rank dies so easily. Akaza's words were clearly directed at Rizal and Kyujura. Obviously, this upper rank had seen through it all, recognizing Rizal and Kyujura as the strongest individuals within the group. As for Tanjiro and the other two, Akaza didn't even put them in his eyes. You're the upper three, right? Kyujura asked, his gaze fixed intently on Akaza. Are you also the mastermind behind the Mugen train incident? Kyujura speculated that Akaza had appeared here because he, along with Inmu, had orchestrated the Mugen train incident. Unfortunately, his speculation was wrong. Don't misunderstand, I'm not like those weaklings like lower ranks. Akaza shook his head. I don't involve myself in such messy matters. I just happened to be nearby and received an order to come here because of the lower one's blunder. Order. Kyujura's mind stirred. Someone who can command upper ranks. Could it be? Before Kyujura could finish his thought, Akaza had already changed the subject. What are your names? Akaza surprisingly took an interest in their names, but of course, his question was directed only at Rizal and Kyujura. I'm Rengoku Kyujura, the Flame Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps. Kyujura stated his name. As I thought, you're a Hashira. Akaza showed no surprise, or rather, knowing that the lower one had been slain, regardless of who it was, they would suspect that the culprit was a Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps. Within the Demon Slayer Corps, only Hashira-ranked swordsmen had the ability to kill the lower ranks of the 12 Kizuki. Other ranks of swordsmen were basically incapable of threatening the 12 Kizuki. Even Kino-ranked swordsmen were equally powerless against the lower ranks. Therefore, for the 12 Kizuki, the true threats were only the Hashira, and opponents worth noting were likewise Hashira. What about you? Akaza turned his gaze to Rizal, the smile on his face growing broader. Which Hashira are you? Unfortunately, faced with Akaza's question, Rizal remained silent, just watching him quietly. Don't want to answer, hey. Akaza expressed some regret but didn't feel annoyed. Well, strong ones always have a temper and privilege, and you indeed qualify to be arrogant. With those words, Akaza suddenly raised his head, releasing his full-blown aggressiveness without hiding it. But I'm also strong. Crack. As he spoke, Akaza suddenly stomped on the ground, shattering it beneath his feet. Technique development. Akaza assumed a martial arts stance, with a firm stance, performing a starting pose, causing a 12-sided snowflake pattern to appear under his feet. Destructive Death, Compass Needle. As the snowflake pattern emitted a bright light, his pair of golden eyes gleamed brightly. Danger! Kyujura reacted quickly and stepped forward without hesitation. Bang! In that split second, Akaza disappeared from the spot. He broke through the ground, trampling the earth underfoot, darting out as fast as lightning. With a burst of explosive air, he rushed in front of Rizal. Everyone felt their vision blur. Akaza had disappeared a second ago, and the next second he suddenly appeared right in front of them, his face wearing an aggressive smile now seemingly inches away. Tanjiro couldn't react. Zenitsu couldn't react. Inosuke couldn't react either. Even though they had sensitive and keen senses, in the face of such absolute speed, their bodies couldn't keep up, let alone react. Rizal, however, calmly moved his finger slightly, preparing to draw his sword. He had no choice since Akaza was coming for him. Whoosh! With a fearless smile, Akaza swung his fist toward Rizal. His fist was so fast that even the sound barrier couldn't keep up until it was about to touch Rizal's face. However, Rizal stopped the action he was about to take because Flame Breathing, Second Form, Rising Scorching Sun. A flaming blade rose violently from bottom to top, slashing toward Akaza's fist, which carried a sonic boom. Seeing the trajectory, the flaming blade would definitely cut down his arm before his fist could touch Rizal's face. Ha ha ha! However, instead of being scared, Akaza laughed madly, twisting his arm and unabashedly striking toward the fire blade that was slashing toward him. Ding! Akaza's fist carrying a sonic boom collided with Kyujura's flaming blade, ultimately resulting in a crisp metal collision sound, causing the two to flick away from each other, and creating distance. Flame Breathing, First Form, Unknowing Fire. Kyujura engulfed his entire body in flames and with a fierce momentum like a rocket, charged toward Akaza. Destructive Death, Disorder. Watching the blurred figure of Kyujura charging toward him at such speed that even his silhouette was indistinguishable, Akaza's fighting intent erupted. Instead of retreating, he advanced, striking out with both hands like a machine gun. Boom! Amid the exploding sound, Kyujura's charge was blocked by Akaza. Kyujura's fiery slash was deflected by Akaza's fist, resembling a barrage of bullets. It seemed as though he was engulfed in a storm of punches, nearly overwhelmed by the countless fist strikes aimed at him. At this moment, the gazes of a swordsman and a demon instantly clashed, sparking intense friction. Boom, 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 boom. In the next moment, the fierce battle between a swordsman and a martial artist erupted without warning. Unable to land a blow, Kyujura unleashed a flurry of flames, enveloping Akaza in a sky-covering, earth-hiding blaze. While it appeared that he was attacking every corner of Akaza's body, his intent was subtly focused on Akaza's neck, aiming most of his slashes at Akaza's vital points after feinting his attacks. Unfazed, Akaza met Kyujura's sword with his bare fists, engaging in combat without weapons. His fists repeatedly struck Kyujura's sword, deflecting, knocking, smashing, and even blocking it, leaving numerous blood trails on his hands and spilling copious amounts of blood. Despite the immense price of this battle, Akaza showed no fear, instead bursting with astonishing determination and fighting intent. With a smile on his face, he swung his fists wildly, unleashing fist strikes as powerful as toppling mountains and overturning seas toward Kyujura. As for the wounds on Akaza's body, they were healed in less than a second by his terrifying regenerative ability as an upper rank. Ha ha ha! Your attacks are futile, Kyujura. Akaza laughed loudly before suddenly giving a powerful punch. Boom! Another explosion resounded as Akaza's powerful punch landed on the sword hastily raised by Kyujura, sending him flying after creating a shock wave. Ugh! Kyujura couldn't halt his momentum as he was sent flying, his feet skidding along the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris. Destructive death! Akaza immediately assumed a defensive stance once again, preparing to unleash his fist toward Kyujura like a cannonball. However, he suddenly halted because another figure had appeared in front of him, seemingly out of nowhere. Maintaining a steady posture, Rizel stood in front of Akaza with a calm expression on his face, but his eyes betrayed a hint of indifference. With this, Akaza's opponent was switched. Chapter 147, Becoming a Demon? Bullshit! At this moment, Akaza was very, very excited. It was because of the man who had appeared in front of him. That's a massive and inspiring fighting spirit! Akaza couldn't help but exclaim. Sensing fighting spirit was the driving force of Akaza's blood demon art. Those proficient in martial arts would naturally possess fighting spirit, it was just a matter of more or less. Just like how anger generated wrath, when someone had murderous intent toward another, they naturally emitted a murderous aura. Similarly, martial artists naturally emitted a fighting spirit, whether they were swordsmen or something else. Akaza's blood demon art, known as destructive death, compass needle, could sense his opponent's fighting spirit like a compass, making his attacks and evasive actions as precise as if being drawn by a magnet. The stronger his opponent's fighting spirit, the stronger the reaction of the compass needle, and the higher the intensity and precision of his corresponding technique or attack. With this blood demon art as the foundation, Akaza used a series of precise, swift, and powerful martial arts to strike his opponents by sensing their fighting spirit. For example, the previously used destructive death disorder was one of them, a technique based on sensing fighting spirit, capable of striking with unparalleled precision, causing excessive damage. Akaza's perception of his opponent's fighting spirit was extremely keen and sensitive, and he could easily discern his opponent's strength with this technique. In his perception, the human standing before him emitted a tremendous and awe-inspiring fighting spirit. Such a massive fighting spirit, even for him who survived for hundreds of years, he had never felt it from anyone else. Not even from that person. Therefore, Akaza was very interested in Rizel, and facing him like this excited him even more. Although it's not yet condensed, not refined enough, unable to reach the highest domain yet, judging solely from the scale of your fighting spirit, you must be the strongest in this world. Akaza spoke with his eyes gleamed as he stared at Rizel. You must be very strong, extremely strong, even have a chance to reach that highest domain, such an existence like you being just a human, it's truly a pity. At those words, Rizel raised his eyebrows slightly but said nothing. Hey, what do you say? Wanna come over to our side? Akaza extended his hand toward Rizel, smiling invitingly. I'll introduce you to that person and make you a demon, how about it? As soon as he said that, before Rizel could speak, others became excited. Don't listen to him. Big brother. Tanjiro was the most excited, so excited that he even overcame his fear and finally managed to shout. Bento boy! Kyujura, who was always calm, also shouted. His usual laid-back attitude was nowhere to be seen. By the way. Akaza turned to face Kyujura. Why don't you join us too, Kyujura? Though you may not match up to this guy, your fighting spirit is equally massive. I've slain so many Hashira, and among them, you surely rank among the best. It's such a waste for humans, really. Just become a demon, and I promise you'll become even stronger. I refuse. Kyujura answered without hesitation. I can't think of any reason to become a demon. His remark surprisingly caught Akaza off guard. Are you kidding me, Kyujura? Akaza chuckled. Reasons to become a demon can be listed without much effort. Yet you claim there's no reason at all? Truly absurd. In a sense, his words weren't wrong since there were indeed many reasons to become a demon. For example, once someone became a demon, they wouldn't die or age. As long as they avoided sunlight, they would live indefinitely. Moreover, no matter how severe their injuries or illnesses, becoming a demon guaranteed recovery. Not to mention, they also gained inhuman strength, which was another advantage. Compared to fragile and powerless humans, becoming a demon, in the eyes of most people, wasn't necessarily a bad thing. However, to become a demon means living in darkness for eternity, unable to see sunlight, and having to feed on human flesh just to keep your sanity. That's the true absurdity. Kyujura countered, his expression serious. But compared to the benefits gained, how significant is that cost? Akaza said nonchalantly. Even humans spend roughly half of their days indoors, and the rest is wasted on meaningless sleep. Considering just the active hours, humans and demons aren't so different, right? Humans during the day and demons at night. As for eating humans, it's just a way to get nutrition and become stronger. It should be a good thing. What's absurd about it? Don't humans do the same to livestock like chickens or pigs? Akaza's words earned a furious glare from Tanjiro and a disapproving headshake from Kyujura. Our values and perspectives are like the difference between heaven and earth. Continuing this talk is meaningless. Kyujura stated firmly. Regardless, I'll never become a demon. Upon hearing that, Akaza's smile instantly vanished from his face. How foolish! Human existence is nothing but a burden. Limited life. Limited talent. Limited time. Limited body. Everything about humans is limited. With such limitations, how can you chase infinite power and reach the highest domain? Akaza's voice was cold, but his voice carried intensity. Only demons, those with infinite time and life, can free themselves from the shackles of the human body, constantly improving themselves, continuously getting stronger, until they reach that highest domain. You are such powerful beings, would you really be willing to watch your strength fade away, only to disappear when your body ages and your lifespan ends? If that's truly what you desire, then you are truly foolish. Akaza's words made Tanjiro unable to hold back any more. Where's the foolishness? Tanjiro exclaimed angrily. Our lives may be limited, but it's because of that limitation that many valuable things emerge. That's not something as shallow as being summarized by mere strength. However, his impassioned words only earned a cold response. Shut up! Whoosh! Akaza suddenly swung a powerful punch at Tanjiro. His punch, although clearly striking through the air, caused a resounding boom in the atmosphere. In no time, his punch transformed into a gust of wind, roaring toward Tanjiro's head. Boom! Akaza's powerful punch hit, creating an impact like thunder. However, this punch didn't hit Tanjiro, but Kyujura, who arrived just in time and blocked it with his sword. Mr. Rengoku! Tanjiro shouted at Kyujura, who appeared in front of him. Be careful, young Kamatu! Kyujura didn't turn back, just gave a word of caution. Akaza maintained his punching posture and spoke to Tanjiro with a cold voice. Weaklings should recognize their weaknesses. It's your weakness that makes you see trivial things as important. As a weakling, how can you grasp that the path of the strong can't tolerate anything unnecessary? Those are just obstacles holding people back from getting stronger. After saying that, Akaza looked again at Rizal, who hadn't moved at all. You must understand what I'm saying, right? Akaza smiled. No, it's okay if you don't understand. When you encounter a situation where you cannot move forward no matter what you do, you will know that your human body is just a shackle. Only by becoming a demon can you continue to grow stronger, until you reach that so-called highest domain. Akaza couldn't finish his sentence since Riesel interrupted his words, finally speaking up. Yes. Exactly. Akaza, seeing Riesel finally speak, immediately showed a happy smile. You still have a chance now, you can gain more time to improve yourself. Come on. Become a demon and you can be like me, always fighting, always getting stronger. At this point, Akaza had already opened his arms wide, ready to accept Riesel at any moment. Unfortunately. Do you know how much time it took me from being just an ordinary human that you looked down upon to having the power I have now? Riesel asked in a calm tone, leaving Akaza stunned. In the next moment, Akaza got the answer. 4 months. Riesel continued, suddenly smiling at Akaza. I've grown from an ordinary human with no power to this point in just 4 months. With those words, not only Akaza but even Kyujura and the other 3 showed expressions of disbelief. Impossible. Akaza vehemently denied it. Your massive fighting spirit is obviously the result of years of training. It's basically impossible to achieve it with just a human body in a mere 4 months. He simply couldn't believe Riesel's words. Just because you can't do it doesn't mean others can't. Riesel said calmly, raising his eyebrows. The fact remains, whether you deny it or not. Akaza's face immediately darkened. What I want to tell you is, what you can't do, don't preach it to others as an absolute truth. Riesel continued in the same calm tone. You can't become consistently strong with a human body? You can't reach the highest domain unless you become a demon? Who told you that bullshit? At least, I haven't encountered any bottlenecks yet, let alone know what limits are, so there's no reason to abandon my human body. Besides, in my opinion, what you call the highest domain is not such a difficult domain to reach. Perhaps the next time you see me, I will have already reached it. Of course, that is. Riesel paused, gazing at Akaza's face for a while before continuing with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. If you can leave here alive today. Upon hearing that, Akaza's complexion immediately turned ugly. Technique development. He stopped talking and assumed a stance. Destructive death, compass needle. A snowflake pattern appeared under his feet, causing his fighting spirit to surge. Seeing this, Riesel narrowed his eyes and suddenly shouted. Rengoku! Lend me your sword. Kyujura hesitated for a moment, then quickly threw his sword to Riesel. Riesel reached out and caught the sword. As I thought, this kind of sword is more suitable, hey. Riesel weighed the sword in his hand as if confirming something, murmuring to himself. Huu. Haa. Shortly afterward, Riesel started to breathe in and out, and gradually, the air around him began to grow increasingly hotter. Chapter 148, Tsuchikuni Yoriichi. As Riesel breathing in and out, the abnormality around him quickly caught everyone's attention. His fighting spirit is changing. Akaza's eyes narrowed slightly. In his perception, Riesel's fighting spirit suddenly changed. It wasn't a drastic change, still as massive and strong, but there was a sense of dangerous substance flowing within it, at least for him. Unlike Akaza, the others each sensed the abnormality differently. His heartbeat suddenly became so fast. Zenitsu, who had been crouching with his hands on his head, blurted out nervously. There's a tingling sensation all over my skin, what is he doing? Inashuk rubbed his exposed arms. The rhythm and precision of his breathing have changed. Kyujura sounded surprised and puzzled. As for Tanjiro, he stared blankly at Riesel at this moment, feeling strangely familiar with something about him. At this moment, the aura emanating from Riesel's body gave Tanjiro a sense of déjà vu as if he was seeing his deceased father. In a daze, he even felt as if he was looking at a snowy landscape, seeing his father wearing priest attire dancing the Kagura dance. Suddenly, the scene changed, turning into a recent memory. In a mountain infested with spiders, a demon stood silently. One of his eyes bore Japanese characters. Unlike Akaza, who had both eyes engraved with characters, this demon only had his left eye bore 2 characters. One was lower rank and the other was 5. It was unmistakably Rui, the lower 5 who was recently defeated. Several months ago, Tanjiro encountered this lower 5 and battled with him. In that battle, Tanjiro was ravaged, subjected to unreasonable violence, repeatedly injured, and knocked down, until his sword broke like a butterfly caught in a spider's web, becoming prey to Rui. Rui shot threads capable of shredding a human body into pieces toward him, weaving them into a net, literally leaving him with nowhere to escape. However, in the very end, Tanjiro unleashed that technique. Hinokami Kagura, dance. It was the Kagura dance his father once performed in the snow. It was the dance his father had taught and used. Just as Tanjiro was forced into a corner facing the arrogantly impossible to defeat spider demon, he unleashed the Kagura dance passed down through generations of his family, even resorting to using unknown breathing, unleashing astonishing power, momentarily overpowering Rui. In truth, the reason Tanjiro came to the Mugen train to find Kyujura, aside from the mission from the Demon Slayer Corps, was for another reason. He wanted to ask Kyujura if he knew why Hinokami Kagura had turned into a breathing style usable for combat. All of this was the idea of the current insect Hashira, Kocho Shinobu. As one of the few Hashira who harbored goodwill toward Tanjiro, upon learning about Hinokami Kagura from his mouth, Shinobu thought that Kyujura, who mastered flame breathing, might know something. Perhaps because Hinokami Kagura and flame breathing were quite similar in power and characteristics, both employing swordsmanship that conjured flames. For this reason, Tanjiro came here, to Kyujura's side, to uncover the secret of Hinokami Kagura passed down through generations of his family. Unfortunately, before Tanjiro could find the opportunity to inquire, the incident on the Mugen train occurred. And now, Tanjiro was surprised to find himself facing off against the upper three, with Rizel holding Kyujura's Nikaran sword in his hand. Upon entering the state of total concentration breathing, Rizel's appearance was identical to that of himself and his father when using Hinokami Kagura. What's going on? Unfortunately, Tanjiro couldn't utter the question in his mind, because he smelled danger. Watch out! Sensing the scent coming from Akaza, Tanjiro couldn't help but shout frantically at Rizel. However, before his voice could fully resonate, Akaza's impending killing move was already unleashed. Destructive Death, Annihilation type. A terrifying power suddenly erupted around Akaza's body, forming a dreadful shockwave, like an explosion, accompanying his two fists as it surged toward Rizel. This was the most powerful technique among Akaza's martial arts techniques, named Annihilation type. It concentrated all his fighting spirit and strength into the palm of his hands, which he used to strike his target with tremendous force, creating two powerful circular shockwaves. Feeling the increasingly formidable threat from Rizel's fighting spirit, Akaza no longer held back, directly unleashing this technique. If Akaza stood in Rizel's place, facing the charging Mugen train on the train tracks, this might not have directly destroyed the entire train, but the locomotive that collided directly with this technique would certainly have been crushed. Such a tremendously powerful attack, like a tsunami, swept out like an exploding shockwave, tearing through the earth, tearing through the air, and thundering toward Rizel. Seeing this, the faces of Kyujura and the other three changed drastically, all shouting something to Rizel, but their voices were drowned out by the explosion-like shockwave as they were blown away by the forceful wind and thrown from their position. Rizel, holding Kyujura's Nikaran sword, stood directly against this attack, giving the impression of a tiny human about to be engulfed by a tornado, powerless and fragile. Yet, faced with this utterly destructive attack, Rizel unexpectedly closed his eyes. Boom! A shockwave, like an explosion, instantly engulfed Rizel's body, shattering the ground beneath him. But within this astonishing shockwave, flames emerged. Like the sun rising at dawn. Like light appearing in the darkness. As the flames ignited, it suddenly expanded. Whoosh! Amidst the roar, the shockwave was sliced in half by the erupting flames. At this moment, a fierce wind howled, sand filled the air, and the severed shockwave swept in all directions, stirring up an unstoppable gust, whistling as it went. Meanwhile, the flames that cut through the shockwave leaped into the air, transforming into a dazzling fiery wheel, burning through the atmosphere, pushing back the impact. Like a fleeting ray of sunlight, it suddenly tore through the void, slashing toward Akaza. In everyone's eyes, this stunning display was akin to the embodiment of the sun gracefully dancing into existence. Akaza only had time to shrink his pupils to the size of a pinhead and couldn't do anything else, not even change his stance, and remained in the posture of unleashing destructive death, annihilation type. At this moment, the flying flames cut through his field of vision, slicing through his fighting spirit, and ultimately slicing through his neck, disappearing behind him. Swish! Sun breathing, first form. Only then did Rizel appear in the spot where the flames vanished, standing behind Akaza, back turned to him, slowly sheathing his sword. Dance! Click! With the clicking sound of the sword sheathing, everything returned to calm in that single moment. The shockwave vanished. The flames vanished. The destructive power vanished. It was as if nothing had ever existed, as if everything that had just happened was merely an illusion, making the entire scene fall into silence. Whether it was Kyujura or the three youths, they all lay on the ground, eyes wide open, watching everything unfold, completely devoid of sound. Even Akaza fell silent. Rizel also remained silent and standing calmly, his expression unchanged. Strangely, this silence persisted for who knew how long. "Hey, what's your name?" At a certain moment, Akaza asked in a hoarse voice, a question that had previously gone unanswered. Rizel didn't turn around but still heard Akaza's question. Yet, upon hearing Akaza's question, Rizel's initial reaction wasn't to give his name but to recall that dream, recalling that swordsman who had meticulously taught him every move of sun breathing. Ding-ling! In this silence, the Hanafuda earrings on Tanjiro's ears swayed just right, emitting a wind chime-like sound. Tsujikuni Yoriichi. Rizel uttered his name. Tsujikuni Yoriichi. Akaza's voice began to slow down, lowering. "I will remember that name." As his words fell, his head gradually tilted from his neck and fell from his body. Thud. His body collapsed as well, devoid of any remaining aura. Needless to say, Upper 3 Akaza had been defeated. Facing an enemy whom even the Hashira found terrifying, a young man who had not yet joined the Demon Slayer Corps, was not a Demon Slayer, and didn't even possess a Nichiren sword, slew an upper rank with just one slash. This was an astonishing feat. This was a terrifying achievement. Kyujura and the other three stared dumbfounded at the scene, unable to snap out of it for a long time. Dance. Tanjiro, staring blankly at Rizel, recalled the radiant and beautiful sword technique Rizel just displayed and felt his mind in chaos. Indeed, Tanjiro's feeling wasn't wrong. When he saw the movement Rizel had just displayed, it was indeed very familiar to him. Whether it was the Hinokami Kagura Tanjiro used against the lower 5 on MT Nadagumo several months ago or the sword technique Rizel just used against the upper 3, both were named dance. Sun breathing. Tanjiro's mind was in disarray, completely losing his ability to think. Unaware of all this, Rizel had already walked over to Kyujura. "Nice sword but it's too heavy for me." Rizel smiled faintly as he returned Kyujura's sword. At his words, Kyujura smiled wryly. After all the struggle, the events of the Mugen train were truly coming to an end. About 10 minutes later, several swordsmen wearing the uniforms of the Demon Slayer Corps, along with a group of masked individuals, swiftly arrived from the other side of the train tracks to clean up the scene, tidying up the aftermath. Chapter 149, Impossible. In the end, the incident of the Mugen train was classified as a derailment accident by the authorities. This was bound to thrust the Mugen train back into the headlines, and the maintenance personnel associated with the train would inevitably face a series of repercussions. After all, the Mugen train had undergone factory inspections beforehand, and it was only after they adamantly declared no anomalies that the train was allowed to resume operation. Now, barely setting off, such a major incident occurred. It was impossible for those who previously mocked the man-eating rumors about the Mugen train in the newspapers to escape responsibility. Perhaps the only thing worth celebrating was that all 200 passengers on the train emerged unscathed. Without a doubt, this might be considered a miracle by many. As for the existence of the Demon Slayer Corps, it was never mentioned from beginning to end. Because the Demon Slayer Corps was an unofficial organization, strictly speaking, even parading around with swords on the streets was not allowed. Therefore, how could they be regarded as heroes who saved 200 passengers? In fact, very few people in the world were aware of the existence of demons. Demons were nothing more than fictional creatures in the eyes of many. Even if someone told them that the incident of the Mugen train was caused by demons, most people would scoff at the idea. As a result, whether it was demons or the Demon Slayer Corps, in this incident, they were destined not to be reported on. In a sense, the Demon Slayer Corps, like demons, could only operate in the darkness. Although their existence had a long history, they were grassroots organizations formed spontaneously by people persecuted by demons. Fame and fortune mean nothing to them. Regardless, Rizel didn't necessarily see this as a bad thing. Our enemies are demons, human-eating monsters. If we operate conspicuously outside, it's not impossible for demons to actively attack us, or even attack people around us. That's very dangerous and must be avoided. That was the argument Kyujura put forward before, telling Riesel that the Demon Slayer Corps had narrowly escaped being wiped out by demons several times in history by being hidden. Needless to say, the Demon Slayer Corps mostly operated covertly and was not publicly acknowledged. Especially the whereabouts of the Master, the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps, were top secret. Not only was his location absolutely concealed, but the routes to get there were changed periodically. Apart from the Hashira, few people know how to reach there. And now, I'll take you to see the Master. Young Tsujikuni. Kyujura declared such, even addressing Riesel by the name he said to Akaza. Is that okay? Riesel didn't refuse, just asked curiously. No problem. Kyujura nodded. It's more like, it's what the Master requested. He wants to meet you. He requested. Riesel was surprised. Does your leader already know about me? Domu. Kyujura admitted openly. Because we have Kasugai crows. My Kasugai crow has already sent back information about you, young Tsujikuni. Kasugai crows were a type of crow trained by the Demon Slayer Corps. Not only could they speak, but they also had distinct self-awareness. The Demon Slayer Corps specifically trained these crows to serve various purposes such as communication between members, transmitting information, and assigning missions, thus creating a fairly convenient intelligence network. Basically, each member of the Demon Slayer Corps received a Kasugai crow when they joined. The Corps relied on Kasugai crows to assign missions to their members located in various places, sending them to hunt demons. At the same time, Kasugai crows would gather various information and send it to the headquarters of the Demon Slayer Corps, where the Master resided, ensuring he was informed about the latest events and developments without leaving his abode. Needless to say, Riesel's presence and his performance on the Mugen train were promptly reported back to the headquarters of the Demon Slayer Corps by Kyujura's Kasugai crow and delivered to the Master. As a result, the Kasugai crow delivered the Master's instructions to Kyujura, expressing a desire to meet Riesel in person. How, young Tsujikuni? Let's go see the Master together. Kyujura insisted, pressing down on Riesel's shoulder even before he could respond as if to prevent him from escaping. Okay, let's just get it over with, but don't get too close to me. Riesel pushed away Kyujura's face, which had leaned in too close, agreeing to the arrangement. Riesel actually wanted to meet the Master of the Demon Slayer Corps for one simple reason: to ask for a favor. Upon learning that his destination for this dimensional travel was the world of Demon Slayer, Riesel had a plan in mind from the outset to gather information about the breathing styles of this world. Moreover, since collecting breathing styles required involvement with the Demon Slayer Corps, Riesel had no choice but to do so. For this reason, upon hearing about the Mugen train, Riesel headed straight to the train because he knew that Kyujura, the Flame Hashira, along with the three main characters, would be there. As for Akaza and Enmu, Riesel was merely interested in understanding the strength of the 12 Kizuki and the general strength of demons in this world. He wasn't specifically targeting or caring about them. Now, with Kyujura presenting this opportunity to Riesel, there was naturally no reason for him to refuse. With the assistance of the Master of the Demon Slayer Corps, collecting breathing styles would be a breeze. Excellent! Kyujura exclaimed happily, patting Riesel's shoulder repeatedly. No time to waste, let's set off immediately. His words prompted Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inashug to gather around eagerly, or rather, it was Tanjiro who was the most eager. Mr. Rengoku, can I come with you guys? Tanjiro asked. Got something important, young Kamadu? Kyujura paused for a moment before adding. If it's not urgent, better not casually visit Master's place. Meeting Master isn't something that happens easily. He said it like that was also to conceal the location of the Master of the Demon Slayer Corps, ensuring the safety of both the Master and the Corps' headquarters. I just have some questions to ask you too. Tanjiro explained. Even if I don't go to Master's place, it's fine. Saying so, Tanjiro stole a glance at Riesel, evidently concerned about the relationship between Hinokami Kagura and Sun breathing that Riesel had previously used. Domu. If that's the case, then it's no problem. Kyujura, having learned the whole story, said very frankly. Since that's settled, why don't you all come to my place first? Let me treat you. Thank you. Tanjiro said excitedly, smiling as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Zenitsu and Inashug seemed to have no objections. Hey! Big Eyes! Do you have something like a locomotive there? Let me borrow it to work out my fists a bit. Inashug raised his fist and made an unreasonable request. Work out your fists? That's a very good idea. Kyujura nodded earnestly. But I don't have one. Upon hearing his answer, Zenitsu's motivation grew stronger. If we go to the Flame Hashira's place, we won't need to go on missions temporarily, and if we don't need to go on a mission, we won't need to hunt demons, and if we don't hunt demons, we won't encounter any dangers, so I won't die. Zenitsu said with a torrent of momentum and struck a victorious pose on his own. Well said, young man. Kyujura gave Zenitsu a thumbs up, saying with much appreciation. But that won't do. Trying to escape missions at my place? You probably don't know how to write the word Hashira of the Flame Hashira. After thinking that way, Kyujura had already figured out what kind of mission to assign to Zenitsu. And so, Rizel, Kyujura, Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inashuk, the group of 5, prepared to set off to the headquarters of the Demon Slayer Corps. Meanwhile, the other members of the Demon Slayer Corps stayed behind at the scene to clean up the aftermath. However, not a single person noticed that in a corner, a headless corpse, which had not instantly disintegrated to ash after being beheaded by a Nichiren sword, lay silently, devoid of all vitality, suddenly moved its fingers. By the time one of the members of the Demon Slayer Corps came over, there was already nothing left. At the same time, within a luxurious mansion, a figure emitted a dark and dangerous aura. Tsujikuni Yoriichi. A man stood in front of a bookshelf, seemingly reading a book in his hand, muttering in a daze. Rib. In the next moment, the book in his hand suddenly tore in half and shattered into pieces by some unknown power. Unaware of this, his hand holding the fragments of the book was trembling. It can't be. As the man murmured, veins bulged on his forehead. Absolutely impossible. Tsujikuni Yoriichi. That name awakened a certain unbearable past hidden deep in the man's heart, making him feel as if this body that had survived for 1,000 years was throbbing faintly as if some wound were acting up. At the same time, a slight fear in his heart was also awakened. He can't possibly still be alive. He's already dead, that's for sure. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here. If Yoriichi were still alive, there would be no way for him to be active again. It was because he confirmed Yoriichi's death that he appeared again in this world. Now, hundreds of years have passed, and that man, who was a genuine monster compared to himself, should have long been dead. Yet, why did that man suddenly appear again out of the blue? Is someone impersonating him? Lowering his head, the man in the study muttered in confusion. But the breathing style that beheaded Akaza, it's indeed sun breathing. Such swordsmanship, such strength, it was terrifying and powerful, just like Tsujikuni Yoriichi he knew. No, I must confirm who that human really is before I can be at ease. After making a decision, the man pressed his hand to his temple and called out 2 names. Hantengu, Kyoko, come to me quickly. After the call, a few seconds later, 2 voices echoed in his mind. Yes, Lord Muzan. Chapter 150, Hashira. According to Kyujura, the headquarters of the Demon Slayer Corps was known as the Yubayashiki Estate. Because the master of the Demon Slayer Corps was a descendant of a family called Yubayashiki who had held this position for generations, the corps was also established by this family. As a result, the place where the master resided was the headquarters of the Demon Slayer Corps as well as the residence of the Yubayashiki family. Due to the sensitive nature of the location, Rizel wasn't informed of its whereabouts on the way to the Yubayashiki estate. Furthermore, he didn't have the opportunity to see the route. Instead, he sat with Kyujura in a tightly sealed carriage and was transported to the destination without even glimpsing outside. As a result, when Rizel got off the carriage, he didn't even know where he was or what this place was. All he knew was that Kyujura had brought him to a very secluded place and arrived at the courtyard of a large Japanese mansion. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inashuk did not accompany them but were arranged by Kyujura to go to his own home. Only Rizel and Kyujura came to this estate, and there wasn't even a servant responsible for guiding them. Rizel looked around and found the environment here was quite beautiful. Not only was the ground paved with stones, but there were also flowers and plants specially planted around, along with flowing water and small bridges. Undoubtedly, the style of the estate was Japanese, with a sense of historical weight and ancient feeling. Yup. We are here. Kyujura, who brought Rizel to this place, patted his shoulder and then loudly announced toward the direction of the manor. Flame Hashira Rengoku Kyujura and swordsman Tsujikuni Yoriichi is here. With Kyujura's already loud voice, after deliberately shouting aloud, it turned into an echo, reverberating throughout the entire estate, persisting for a long time. Riesel quietly watched this scene and, at a certain moment, calmly lifted his head. Swish, 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 swish. In this split second, sky-splitting sounds resounded one after another as several figures flew from all directions to the courtyard. They landed on the walls surrounding the courtyard and looked down at Riesel standing in the center of the courtyard, emitting different but equally powerful auras. Hey! Seeing this scene, Kyujuro was somewhat astonished. Ah! You guys are here too. It was no wonder he would be surprised. As the deliberately hidden headquarters of the Demon Slayer Corps, the Yubayashiki estate was rarely visited by people on ordinary days. Even the Hashira rarely gathered here at the same time. Only during the semi-annual Hashira meeting did they gather together to discuss the overall management of the Demon Slayer Corps and future action plans. Normally, the Hashira were busy with their respective missions, not only responsible for guarding vast areas and collecting information related to demons but also training to improve their own strength, coupled with various other tasks. Under normal circumstances, the Hashira would not gather at the headquarters. After all, the semi-annual Hashira meeting had ended recently, so logically, they should have been out completing missions or dealing with the tasks of the Demon Slayer Corps. Yet, at this moment, rare as it was, all the Hashira, seldom seen on ordinary days, had gathered together once again. You finally made it back, Rengoku. A petite girl standing on the courtyard walls closest to Kyujuro greeted him. She had dark purple curly hair with bangs that ended in purple eyes, and wore a Demon Slayer Corps uniform with a haori draped over it patterned with butterfly wings, giving her the appearance of a butterfly ready to take flight, exceptionally beautiful. She was Kocho Shinobu, the insect Hashira. Hey there, Rengoku, heard you made quite a show on the Mugen train, not bad. A young man standing straight with arms crossed, perched on a tree branch like a ninja, remarked with a smile. He was a muscular young man wearing a sleeveless Demon Slayer Corps uniform with a jeweled forehead protector and silver chain-like ornament hanging from each side of the headpiece. His silver-white hair was tied into a prominent ponytail, and he carried two swords on his back, exuding a strong aura. He was Uzui Tenjin, the Sound Hashira. So sorry, Mr. Rengoku, because everyone was curious about what the person who defeated the upper rank looked like. A shy-looking girl standing modestly in the courtyard spoke guiltily. She had large light green eyes, rosy cheeks, a mole under each eye, and 3 grass green and cherry blossom-colored braids cascading down her back. She wore a white haori over a specially modified Demon Slayer Corps uniform, with a short skirt and green striped stockings quite fashionable. She was Kenroji Mitsurai, the Love Hashira. And then? Is that boy the one who defeated the upper rank? A young man with a white hedgehog-like head, 3 scars on his face, and a terrifying appearance covered in scars that exuded a vicious aura asked with a somewhat irritated expression. He wore a white haori with the character kill on it, his uniform open to reveal muscles, emanating a terrifying vibe, as if he could draw his sword at any moment and strike someone down. He was Shinazugawa Sanamai, the Wind Hashira. He killed an upper rank? Unbelievable. A young man lurking in a darker corner chimed in. He had heterochromatic eyes, one green and one gold, the lower half of his face wrapped in bandages, and black medium-length hair curled like seaweed. He wore a black and white striped haori, with a white snake coiled around his neck, hissing at Riesel. He was Aguro Obanai, the Serpent Hashira. Ah, so young, looks only a bit older than Tokaido. To fight with an upper rank at such a young age, it's too pitiful, Namu Amida Butsu. A large man dressed as a monk and the most muscular among the rest, remarked. With hands clasped together and tears streaming down his face, he had a long scar on his forehead and seemed to be completely blind. He wore an olive green robe over his Demon Slayer Corps uniform, with a string of prayer beads in his hands, giving the impression of a monk to those who didn't know him. He was Haim Jimakyume, the Stone Hashira. At this moment, 2 people suddenly leaped down from the walls into the courtyard and stood silently, not uttering a word. Between these 2, one appeared calm and composed, seldom smiling or speaking unnecessarily. He had black hair and wore a Demon Slayer Corps uniform with a haori draped over it, the patterns on its left and right sides differed. On the other hand, the second one had long black hair, the tips tinged with a minty green hue, and his expression was blank and indifferent. He wore a dark, slightly turquoise-tinted Demon Slayer Corps uniform that resembled more of a kimono than the standard cuffed uniform. They were the Water Hashira, Tomioka Jiyuu, and the Mist Hashira, Tokaido Muchiro. All of you really came. Good, this calls for a celebration. With Kyujuro's loud proclamation, every Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps gathered here, a rare occurrence outside their official meetings. Riesel's gaze swept over these newcomers one by one, identifying their identities. Every Hashira also observed him, some with curiosity in their eyes, others with suspicion. For example, Wind Hashira Shinazugawa Sanamai and Serpent Hashira Iguro Obanai didn't hide their suspicions. I say, Rengoku, you didn't send Kasugai Crow back with fake information, did you? Sanamai said impolitely. Can this boy really kill an upper rank? I don't buy it. Agreed. Obanai nodded, twirling the white snake around his neck with a gloomy expression. Upper ranks that haven't had member changes in over 100 years, even we wouldn't dare claim we could behead one of them. Now, out of the blue, a young swordsman we've never heard of claims he succeeded in killing one. Unfortunately, I don't buy it either. You two must have teamed up, right? Tenjin pressed his forehead, striking a bizarre pose. Although not flamboyant, in terms of results, this makes it easier for people to accept. Indeed. Gyumei said, clasping his hands, tears welling up. Killing an upper rank, even if it was teamwork, is still a great achievement. Wind Hashira, Serpent Hashira, Sound Hashira, and Stone Hashira expressed their opinions one after another, seemingly doubting the accuracy of the information. Don't say that, everyone. Perhaps Tsujikuni Yoriichi is a genius like Tokaido. Mitsurai intervened, tapping her fingers while speaking up for Riesel. However, after speaking like that, she stole a glance at him, then secretly squealed in her mind. Tsujikuni looks so handsome. He does seem smart and talented. Shinobu, who had been eyeing Riesel since his entrance, said with a smile before turning to Muchiro. What do you think, Tokaido? I don't care. Muchiro seemed uninterested in the topic. As for the water Hashira, Tomioka Jiyu, he hadn't spoken a word from beginning to end, standing silently, apparently not one for conversation. Eventually, Kyujura spoke up. I've already reported everything truthfully through Kasugai Crow. Every word is true, not a single lie. If there's any deception, I'm willing to commit seppuku. Although the Flame Hashira went so far as to say that, even so, some Hashira were still reluctant to believe it. If it's true, we'll know if we try it out, right? Sanamai smirked menacingly and, in front of everyone, drew the sword on his waist. Shinazugawa. What do you want to do? Kyujura shouted in surprise, his eyes widened. TCH, don't fuss. I just want to test the waters, so it shouldn't matter, right? Sanamai sneered. Anyway, he's not even a member of the Corps, so it wouldn't be against the rules to lay a hand on him, no. In the next moment, Sanamai turned his head to Riesel. Boy, you dare to take a swing at me. Soon, a whirlwind stirred around Sanamai's body, disturbing the air in the courtyard.
Thanks for listening.